This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Here at City Hall and in the public and in the gallery watching on the webcast to today's meeting of the GLA Oversight Committee. Please may I remind participants to turn off your phones or put them onto silent, and can I ask members to ensure that any electronic devices are not placed in front of your microphones. First of all, if I could start with asking the clerk, Judith Smith, to confirm if there are any absences for today.
There's no absences today.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. So can we note the list of offices held by Assembly members? And can I also ask members if they have any disclosable pecuniary interests in specific items listed on the agenda? None? Great. Thank you. Can we confirm the minutes of the meeting of the committee on the 23rd of October to be signed by me as a correct record? Thank you. And can we note the completed and ongoing actions arising from previous meetings of the GLA Oversight Committee? We can now move on to our first substantive agenda item, which is a discussion with GLA officers on the preparations for the 2028 Mayor of London and London Assembly elections, and to receive an update on the Greater London Returning Officers' response to the recommendations of the London Assembly's Elections Review Working Group, which a number of us on committee were on. I'd like to welcome our guests who have joined us in the chamber for the discussion. So first of all, Mary Hartley, who is the Greater London Returning Officer, and also Alex Conway, who is our Deputy Greater London Returning Officer. So thank you both for joining us today. I'll start the questions for this afternoon's session. So if we could start perhaps with yourself, Mary. How are you working with government and the Electoral Commission to implement the reforms to the electoral system announced in July of this year? And will any of the planned reforms be particularly challenging for London to implement?
Thank you very much, Assembly Member Mahfouz. That's a big question to start with. I think that, so there's a whole raft of reforms that the government is looking to bring in on elections. Most of those some of those will be in well before 2028. So, our colleagues in London boroughs and, of course, election staff right across the country are busy sort of working through some of those implications around identification, around 16 and 17-year-olds voting, around some of the accessibility, new legislation around accessibility of polling stations, postal votes, things like that. And there are also some timing changes as well within the election deadline, which again is not really for me and Alex and our team to worry about. But I think at some level, I'm pleased that some of those will have been in place before we get to 2028. So some of them will have been rehearsed already. But it is likely that some of those changes don't come in until 2028. We don't yet have a full legislative timetable from the government, so we can't be sure. So I think the first thing to say is there are likely to be some parts of the electoral reform set of electoral reforms that are playing out at the first time in 2028. And that is going to be an extra challenge that those who we work with across London on the elections, our constituency returning officers and our borough returning officers and all of their staff are going to be dealing with. The big one for us, of course, which obviously hasn't come through the electoral reform papers, but has come through the devolution bill, is the reinstatement of the second preference vote for mayor. So clearly that is absolutely in our sights and has helped inform some of the decisions that I'm now making about how we count. But we've done that before. That's new. That's not new to us. We've worked in that system before, so that doesn't feel a particular challenge. And then the Electoral Commission, to come back to, so we have a very good, I think, and I think better than we've had ever, good working relationship with the government elections team, the officials that we're working with at the moment in the Cabinet Office and in MHCLG. And that's also been helped by the fact that Alex has been sitting on one of the working groups the government put together looking at these reforms. So it was really good that he was invited to do that. But of course, it's given us a new set of sort of closer relationships, working relationships, which has been helpful. The Electoral Commission, actually, we haven't seen them for a little while, but we do have a meeting with them before the end of this month. And it'll be good to get their perspective on some of the reforms coming. So I think in short, there's a lot of reform coming. Some of it will be new in 2028, which will cause the people that work with us some extra challenges. The big one for us is the reinstatement of the second vote for mayor, but we've worked with that one before.
Thank you, Mary. So really one of the key, the key primary driver in terms of your proposals today is that reintroduction of the second preference for mayor. Is that right? Yeah. And just before we move on to the other sets of questions, I just wanted to ask in terms of the working group proposals that had come previously. So the election review working group had a number of proposals. Some responses haven't been made yet from the GLA side. And I appreciate some of those are out of your control, but what mechanisms are there for putting in place and monitoring and reporting progress on implementing the recommendations made by the review?
Yeah, well, I'll just say a quick sentence on that and I'll hand over to Alex. So, be assured that Alex and I and our team are very closely monitoring these recommendations to make sure that we do deliver them, because I said right at the beginning, we must take them into account, and we are taking them into account. Some we just, it's not yet time to get to them yet. But there are others that we continue to work on. Alex, I don't know whether you want to say any more.
Only that, I think we thought it might be useful for the committee. You'll see we divided up into three. We thought there's ones where we're ticking them through and saying they're done, or we have actioned them. There's others where we've said other bodies have actioned them, and to some extent that includes things that probably nobody foresaw. When the recommendations were first made, like the new government coming in and confirming that they were going to use bank cards as a form of ID in future, which I think changed the nature of the discussion that we've been having around photo ID and VACs. And then there's others where just the sort of the times, the time to implement the recommendations will be in the future. We know the Assembly always has an interest in the public awareness campaigns that we run. We'll be working on that next year. We have GLA comms colleague who's able to work on this now. So we can come back to the committee at the appropriate time with progress on those recommendations.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Pass on to Assembly Member McCartney.
Thank you. And obviously the introduction of the supplementary vote has meant that electronic counting is now the preferred method to do this. Can I ask what plans you've got in place about procuring that electronic count? And we've had lots of discussions before about the pros and cons of it. But also, will you have a plan B in case, for example, there is another election on the day, or and we need a backup?
I'll ask Alex to speak about what we're doing to procure a provider to count electronically, and then I'll come back and talk about our plan B.
Okay. So firstly, on the procurement has been launched, and in some ways it's the same as GLA uses TfL as our procurement advisors, and it's the same for elections as it is for anything else. I think we've built up a pretty good working relationship over the last 7-8 years, and in case of the procuring the e-count, that was one of the first things I took on when I took on this job in sort of 2017, 2018. So it was very much a case when it came to the procurement documentation of thinking, well, what did we learn from how we ran it last time? What are the things that we might want to do differently? I think the thing we're mindful of in the, we've been doing out before we launched the procurement. We talked to the providers out there because basically it's a smallish world. Within the UK, I think it's only Scotland currently running electronic vote counting. Elsewhere in Europe, elsewhere in the world, it's not uncommon, but there are only so many providers. So the first thing is you want to be sure that if you put something out there, there are people in there who are going to be interested, and we believe that is the case. The next thing, of course, is they have to put forward a satisfactory bid, and I mean, you're right. We can't know that will happen. Previous procurements have been successful, but that doesn't mean that this one will be. What I will say, and Mary may say a bit more, is of course, the difference now is that we have successfully run a manual count in 2021. Now, in the past, that was something we hadn't done, and I think the idea of an electronic count not succeeding kind of filled everybody with fear as to the alternatives. Now we know that we can make the alternative work, albeit there would be extra challenges with a second preference vote. We know it can happen. So when we're going into the procurement, it's not a case of procuring at all costs. We're going to have a quality offer at a reasonable price, and we've been quite clear in the procurement documentation that will be the case. But we should know by next spring, who that provider is.
So there are two plan Bs, aren't there, that we need to think about. Firstly, in the case where we prove unable to be able to procure a e-count provider, we think that is unlikely, but should we find ourselves in that situation, we would have to revert to planning to count manually. Because as Alex says, it's a very small world of providers. And of course, there's significant lead times, which is why we're going now. So we think it's unlikely, but we have to keep an open mind about that. And then the second scenario is, what if something else came along in May 2028? Or got in the way of 2028. So in terms of something coming along in 2028, obviously the obvious scenario that we have to have a plan for is a combined GLA and general election. So for 2024, we planned for that first and foremost, just because of the way the timings worked. And of course, as we know, it didn't happen, but it got quite close to happening, because the general election was only a few weeks later. This time, we are not going to plan first and foremost for a combined. As the paper says, May 28 will only be 3 years, a few months into the current government. So we think that is we think the risk is much lower than it was heading into 2024. But we have to plan for the possibility. So that is an important part of our planning. The other thing that could happen, of course, and it's happened before, is the election would be postponed for some reason. And there are a number of things that have done that. The pandemic's the only thing that's done it before, but there are other things that might have an impact. And in those cases, we then have to be really ready, I have to say, to think and act on our feet and see whether we could in fact secure a big single venue for an electronic count that had to be shifted by 10 days or so. And if not, have a plan for how we would count manually right across the city. But, that's a sort of, a London Bridge type situation, for example. But so we are planning first and foremost for a standalone GLA elections in May 2028, but with some significant provision and thinking behind particularly the possibility of a combined general, and secondly, the possibility of needing to move. Of course, you know, we'll get nearer 2028 over the next few months. And so we will be able to continually assess the risks of those types of things and act accordingly.
The other change in the paper is the move to a single venue, Excel. Now, I very much like the counts at Ali Pali, so I was wondering what is the reason for that? And we have a question on cybersecurity later, so it's if it is mainly that, I don't want to go into details now, and in returning to an electronic account and a single venue, have you taken on board the Borough Returning Officer's views on this?
So I'll say a little bit, and then I'll ask Alex to talk about the rationale for the single site. So I just want to say say really clearly that the plans that I am now working to, that are crystallised in this paper, have the full support of the 14 constituency returning officers, whose job in law it is to run the 14 constituency counts. So I've met all 14 of them. And have their full support. There are borough returning officers as well who are also in the picture. All these plans have been shared with them. Again, I have no indication from any of them that the plans are a problem for them.
Thank you. So, Alex, so I take it all those constituency returning officers, I should say, would be present at Excel running their individual counts. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But in terms of the rationale for going to one single site, cybersecurity is quite a large part of it, but we'll leave that for later.
Yeah.
Cost effectiveness and consistency of delivery are probably the other two big planks of it. But I'll hand to Alex for the detail.
Because we have had delays before in returning the verification, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes, though I mean, it's really as Mary says. I mean, I think we're in reverting to an e-count. You know, we thought, you know, as you know, those three venues have been used consistently at elections. You know, Ali Pali is certainly the most characterful, but probably fair to say that there are some issues there as well in terms of the standard of facilities available by comparison with Excel.
But it's easy to get to for volunteers, you see.
Yeah, but then, you know, these are all, I mean, that's something we're mindful of, and that's why we wanted to talk to the boroughs, of course. But the extent to which we, again, you know, it was a difference of 2024, where it was a manual count where we were relying on very large numbers of borough staff. When we revert now to an electronic count, there'll still be large numbers of borough staff, but they can be supplemented by GLA staff. And the hope is, you know, that clearly by using one venue, you know, we'll avoid the, you know, when you're planning the elections, from my perspective, the duplication in terms of having three sets of sites. You know, the risks, frankly, if something goes wrong at one of those three venues. I mean, we can come on to the discussion about with putting your eggs in one basket, but the way we're running the count over 2 days and the fact that we're booking Excel for a longer period, I think probably helps mitigate those risks. And of course, you know, it enables us to be in one, you know, in one location in person. And to your point around sort of delays around verification and so on, obviously, if we're all in one point and actually we can literally walk and talk to CROs and BROs, that feels like something that should really help. I mean, you know, we'll see by doing. So, I mean, you know, I think, you know, there are pros and cons, and you've outlined some of the potential risks. But I guess we're hopeful that overall we'll see something which is we're able to run more smoothly and cost effectively.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Georgie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mary, just one point. In your introductory remarks, you said there's lots of reform coming. I sincerely hope not. Mary, you have previously told us that you've been liaising with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to remove the ballot mixing requirement. What further detail are you able to share about how exactly this is being done?
So we continue to speak to colleagues in MHCLG. We have, I think everyone is agreed that there is absolutely no need for this piece of legislation that is unique to us, and somebody wrote in many, many years ago. The question now is when legislative time can be found to deal with it. We have made it clear that because of all the things we've just talked about, we need it lifted, we have said, by June 26, because that would then allow us to plan a manual count if we haven't managed to secure the e-count provider. But equally, it will also allow us to deal with anything else that might occur over the next years up to 2028 and beyond. It feels really important to get it off the statute, maybe not for 28, but for successors in the future, to just get rid of it. So we're in very constructive discussions. We just need the legislation delivered. So, Alex?
Well, I think all I'd add to that is that there is, and this hasn't always been the case in the past, but this government has committed to some very significant election legislation, which there's a lot of interest around, including votes for 16 and 17-year-olds and so on. And as part of putting those votes, putting those changes into law, they're going to need to change both primary legislation, but also our GLA election rules, which is where this count mixing, it seems to me, they've got a big job ahead. It's a relatively small job to delete that one word about mixing the ballot papers. I think our concern, as Mary said, is that we want this done sooner rather than later, and that's why we've written to say that we'd like this in place by June 2026. Let's see where they get to with the legislation. But of course, if it's left too late, then in the event that we were reverting to a manual count in 2028, that would bring risks, unacceptable risks from our perspective as well. So we are kind of quite determined to see this happen as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it's perhaps one suggestion, you can use this as an example when going back to government. So I remember the 2024 Bexley and Bromley count. There were significant delays because the numbers didn't tally up with the verification stage. And at least with an e-count, you can get a ward-by-ward breakdown, so you're not having to sift through everything. Therefore, if you remove the mixing requirement, you've got the e-count, you can quickly see where the problem is rather than having to count again, which I think would be a good argument possibly for you and your team to use. Now, I know what you've said about you would like it to be 2026. I mean, looking at the parliamentary timetabling, and I don't know if you spoke to colleagues at MHCLG as to whether it is likely to be removed by 2026. Have we got a good chance of getting the change?
Well, we meet them regularly, and we have asked them for another update. I think we have a chance.
A chance.
That would, I don't know whether Alex
would you
wants to be
dare
more
to stick a
optimistic.
percentage on it, Barry?
No.
Or no? Okay, Alex.
The one thing, I did just want to come back was just to make sure that you were clear. That of course, one rationale for using the e-count is that it does entirely avoid this issue because, as per previous elections, there is. Again, one of the mystifying things about this legislation is it only applies to a manual count, and so with an electronic count, we will be able, as with the previous series of elections, to provide that ward level data anyway. So what we don't want to happen, though, because there are all kinds of reasons, we've just alluded to a few why you could end up having a manual count, is for this legislation to remain. So we are very keen that it's removed as soon as possible.
No, and look, just say, thank you both for your efforts on getting this done, because it was such a silly thing to do in the first place, and I think cross-party everybody agrees that we need to get rid of it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Prince.
Thank you. Just a quick one, actually. Assemblymember Giorgio touched on it. With the electronic count, we know we get the ward data. If the legislation is removed in regards to mixing, would we be able, and we do have to go to a manual count for whatever reason, would we still be able to get ward data in that situation?
I think you'd have to.
So, this is a bit of a thorny question because different returning officers organise their counts differently, as you all know. And many organise counts at ward level, and many therefore have data readily available and readily share it. And in fact, in my previous time as returning officer at borough level, that's what I've done. But not everybody does it that way. And we would have to have a conversation early on about the way everyone was going to undertake a manual count. And as you know, I do have some, useful powers of direction. But they, last time we examined this in some detail, we were advised that they didn't appear to extend into dictating exactly how people count. So it would have to be, through negotiation and agreement. Otherwise, we'll end up with a patchy position where some people are getting this data and some people aren't, which of course is never helpful. Yeah. So it's something that's sitting very much at the back of my mind. Of course, I am hoping that we won't need to have that discussion because the electronic count will do that for us. It does it very, very effectively. But in thinking about the what if we have to count manually, we will also be thinking about how would we then be doing it? So it's not entirely within my gift.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I think most members would prefer that there was a ward breakdown. And I mean, if there are, I'm not asking you to say anything now, but if there were one or two borough or constituency returning officers who were reluctant to do that, it might be worth having a word with the relevant assembly member and see if they can't have a word with the relevant leader of those councils to encourage their returning officer to play ball.
Not the way to keep good relationships with all my returning officers, which is also a priority. But no, I think people have established over long periods of time the way they think is best for how they want to run their counts. And remember, elections are odd things. So I'm personally responsible for this, for the London elections, running smoothly, et cetera, et cetera. People have that same personal responsibility in the rest of the returning officer landscape. So it's very difficult to sort of dictate to people to do. However, having said all of that, as I've already said to you, all 14 constituency returning officers have agreed. I have complete consensus to these plans, which was very, very pleased to be in a position of, and that is built up through some really good, strong working relationships that Alex and Jamie and others in the team have across boroughs. And so that lies at the heart of making this whole thing happen. And it would lie at the heart of getting, a different agreement about how to count manually. I'm not sweeping it aside. I'm hoping we'll be counting electronically as I'm planning. But I am very mindful of the feeling, the strength of feeling about ward level data.
Okay, thank you very much. Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. We've touched on it a little bit, but just coming back to the procurement and making sure that the systems used for e-counting are entirely safe. What measures are you putting in place?
So we've been reflecting on this a lot. If you think, so the last electronic count was in 2021. And our next electronic count, we hope, is going to be in 2028, 7 years between those two events. And, you know, we all know about the escalation of cyber risks and the cleverness and the ingenuity of bad actors in cyber. So we've been very, very mindful of that. And of course, you know, here we are in 2028 running a really, really big, important UK election that, you know, it will attract attention. So this comes to the single site. In the previous elections, we have had, of course, to network the entire setup across these sites. And we've done that very carefully with the National Cybersecurity Centre's advice and all of the rest of it. We've mitigated all of that risk, but there has been risk. And we are clear that in 2028, we should be stepping away from as much of that risk as possible. So by having the count at a single site in a completely closed system, we remove, in a stroke, a significant amount of that cybersecurity risk. Now, we don't remove all of it, and we will continue to work really, really closely with the National Centre for Cybersecurity and others. We've got really good working relationships with them already. I mean, the boroughs, of course, will have, you know, they will have to be paying particular attention to the security risks related to their own systems, because it's not just our count system that has the data, it's the borough systems as well. But the biggest measure we're taking is moving to the single site.
Okay, thanks. Alex, I was really interested earlier when you said if we can't meet the requirements of procurement, we're not going to procure. That's kind of a land in the sand that if we do manual, that's going to be on the table, right?
And I mean, that's right. I mean, in relation to, and to come back to us to that point in a slightly different way, you know, it's important to remember that when we talk about, you know, electronic vote counting, you know, what we actually mean are, you know, scanners are being used to physically count ballot papers. And that means in a worst case scenario where, I'm not going to use the right technical language here, but somehow the e-count was jammed or stopped from working, you would still have the physical votes and you would have to count them manually. Now, that wouldn't be a fun job, but it won't stop the democratic process. So, you know, that's sort of worth remembering. You know, and it's not the case because it is just the scanning of the physical votes. You know, that you know, everything else can be replicated by, you know, we have spreadsheets to work out the calculation.
And the counting software, surely, of the ticking the boxes.
Yeah. So, yes, but we have, you know.
So it's not just scanners; it's the whole software behind it.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how many companies offer that technology at the moment?
So there's
like a ballpark, obviously, not like.
So there's certainly, you know, if you were to look around sort of Europe or the UK, there's certainly sort of 3 or 4. And we did soft market, as I said earlier, before we launched the procurement. Obviously, we talked to those companies to say, if we do this, will you bid? Because if they said no for whatever reason, there'd be literally no point doing this. And they are interested. The tech is being used in Scotland and in other, you know, in other parts of the world. So, you know, it's there, and it's been, you know, in fact, I mean, the e-count technology has basically been there since year 2000. You know, it's not.
And do you say Europe? Are there any British providers of the technology? Is it all foreign providers?
No, there are. Well, they're racking my brains to think of. No, I think some the providers are British-based. I think some of them are.
Okay, lovely. And I hope we'll be taking that into consideration as well. On the actual voting itself, in the 2021 count, for example, I remember votes were going in all sorts of wrong boxes. I'm going to come on to that a bit later in another way. But one of the biggest frustrations were when you're at a manual count, you just say, excuse me, that's the wrong box. and it's sorted. By the time you run around and talk to the returning officer, say that person over there has put something in the wrong box, they say, I'm sorry, it's too late, that's done now. And looking forward, I mean, Alex is not wanting any reform to come, but even, we look at all the parties right now, we're in a position where in London in 2028, a lot of people might have a lot of interest in every single vote. We might even get to that second round. That might actually be important for once. So how are we ready to deal with that? And also, how are we ready to deal with the challenge of there's going to be a lot of het-up counting agents and candidates wanting every vote to be counted correctly. In the past, that has not been done.
So we'll be counting electronically. The bad and doubtful process, which is obviously an important process as well, particularly if people are concerned about every single vote, will be done on screens with agents in the normal way. So that will be very visible.
I understand how it's done, but I'm saying last time it was done, it doesn't work. Well, if you said that vote has gone, so that vote has gone in the wrong pile, and you run round and tell the returning officer,
we won't be doing manual count though this time.
I'm talking about the electronic count, Mary. Yeah. In a manual count, the manual count is brilliant because a counter's in front of you, and you say, "Sorry, that's gone in the wrong one," and they say, "Oh, okay, sorry," and they put it in the right one. In the right box for the right candidate.
Okay, but I don't...
In the electronic vote, you run around, you tell the returning officer, the officer goes and talks to the person and says, oh, they've counted 10 votes by now, we can't go back to that vote.
I'm sorry, I don't understand I don't understand what you mean about it went in the wrong box, because the papers are just going through the scanner. So say me and Alex want to be elected as mayor, somebody has voted for Alex, but the agent, the counting agent, puts it in my box. Alex will want to run round. But there won't be a counting agent doing that. It's all done by the scanners.
No, because the person.
No, it is done by the scanners.
There won't be. So the software won't be as it was in 2021. So you won't.
Well, it might be similar to 2021, yes, but you didn't see. I think you're talking about the bad and doubtful process. Surely that's the only time
when they
when
come
you
up.
see
So when you're seeing them on the screen,
yes, for the bad and doubtful checks.
Okay.
That's the only time you'd see a ballot paper under the electronic process.
So when those go into the wrong pile, how will we make sure they go into the right pile?
So they won't go into a pile. It'll be bad that somebody will click on. It's a good vote.
I understand the process. I'm saying the process is bad at the moment. The process in 2021 didn't work. How will we make sure that in 2028 it does work?
Well, I don't accept these constant repeated points that the process in 2021 didn't work. So if we're going to keep having that, then I need to say something about that, because I don't accept that.
Do you not accept then that what I'm telling you is, as somebody that was counting on that day, I went round about 5 times to tell a returning officer those votes have gone in the wrong pile, and they said there's nothing I can do about that now? You're saying you don't accept what I'm telling you. Well,
I don't remember any of this conversation post-2021. There have been a big issue with the electronic count. The thing is, there is no pile. Somebody will click and say, there's a bad and doubtful, I think this is a good vote for X. And it'll be a click. And it'll be done on a big screen facing outwards to the group of...
Mary, I understand the process. Yes, sorry that I'm using the word pile. Like they click it and it goes into the wrong box.
Just to interrupt. So my understanding, just to allow Mary to finish the point, is that you then have...
So in the end...
And this process is done in front of a number of cross-party agents.
Like it is done on paper in a manual count. We've got cross-party agents around it, and the returning officers going through and saying, yes, I think this is a good vote for X, and, trying to get agreement to that. You do the same thing electronically, but you do it on a screen. Now, in the end, not everyone will agree who it is a good vote for. And so then that becomes a disputed paper. It's the same process.
We'll take it into private, shall we? Because you're not listening to me saying that when the votes came up on screen and that when there was a number of counting agents clicking them into the boxes, no party could say that went into the wrong pile. No one could talk about that. No one could go and say anything.
I'm afraid we are not. Neither of us here can visualise the situation that you're talking about. So let's talk about it offline. Certainly.
Okay. So just before we move on to the next topic, just in terms of, we talked about cyber security. In terms of security of the actual ballot papers overnight, my understanding is that the current proposal has ballot papers sitting at local constituency localities overnight before they are then transferred over to the Excel Centre. What consideration has been given from a security point of view that they're actually, and cost effectiveness in terms of just being delivered directly to the Excel Centre, and that it is therefore the responsibility of one site and we just pay for one set of security and we make sure that we can start the count at the right time because all of the ballot boxes are in the right place at the right time to do so?
So, still quite early days for planning some of that detail, but it is our intention that all the ballot boxes come into Excel on Thursday night. And that we take responsibility for their secure storage through Friday and Saturday.
Okay, perfect. That sounds absolutely brilliant. I'll move on to Assemblymember Bakari.
I'm going to focusing on disability. I know that the working group has been particularly concerned about the neurodiverse voters and also the lack of data. So there were only 3 boroughs who were collecting data on accessibility requests. So what progress has been made in developing an accessibility plan for the 2028 elections, and which specific areas will the plan cover? Will it go into focusing on neurodiverse voters, as well as the issues of resources as well? There was a concern about the lack of aids for deaf voters as well, and aids for them too.
I mean, the government's going to legislate around some of this, I think, as we understand it. We don't know when, but almost certainly before, in time for 2028. So that's sort of new legislative context for accessibility, which I think is going to be helpful. But Alex?
I mean, thanks, Assemblymember Bakari. I'm just reminding myself of what we said in our response on the sort of recommendation on this. And as you know, we supplied some of the data that we were given at the time. I'm not sure I've got to, I think probably the next key step in my mind, at least, is that we see how the May 2026 local elections, whether any new or similar issues arise in respect of those in relation to how people vote, whether people are voting at a polling station or as can be the case with people with disabilities through proxy voting, whether postal voting is working, and as you say, whether people with other sights or hearing differences are adversely affected by those. So I think I'd probably want to talk to the boroughs after May 2026 about their experience there, while at the same time, as Mary mentions, the government's also planning to legislate. And then I think what we've said is we've committed to producing the accessibility plan ahead of the May 2028 elections. And that's something we'll do with the Electoral Commission, and we'll be talking to them about that when we meet them later this month, and to London boroughs. I guess that's something we'll be happy to share with you as it's drafted.
Will there be any? So you're going to assess the next local elections. In that assessment, will you be looking specifically at cost as well? Because I was concerned maybe that the fact that there were a lack of resources for the deaf voters was that down to cost, or is that something that you will look into to see whether that was an issue at all?
What is there a particular thing?
In terms, there was a lack of hearing induction loops and audio devices. So is that a concern that perhaps you will be able to look into, if we're going to assess the next local elections, that could be an area that we could be making sure that we are covering that particular need? And is there a cost issue to that particular need?
I mean, I'm inclined to say that, frankly, there probably is in relation to, is it practical to make every polling station, to install any sort of induction loop? I imagine that has costs attached. I was thinking of the way we sort of tackle, I'm aware that there are all kinds of initiatives, for example, in respect of, which we've talked to RNIB and colleagues around sort of visual disabilities, and there are all kinds of things you could do. And if cost was no object, you could run your polling stations quite differently. Now, the reality is that cost is an object, and we have the rather unsophisticated, but it does work if you've seen it. I've forgotten the name of it. Like a sort of little ruler that allows someone with a sight disability to place across, unaided. It's not high tech the way a speaking, providing a speaking voice could be. So, I mean, we can look into this more, but I don't think I'd want to give an assurance that every polling station can be made as compliant as it should be. I mean, I think there's some sort of non-negotiables, aren't there, in terms of ensuring, for example, that polling stations are, wheelchair accessible. But I don't know that every disability can be catered for in every polling station in the optimal way.
Brilliant. Well, I'm glad that I've raised it, because I think it's a really important area that we do need to make sure that you're aware of it, and that you will assess the needs for this. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. So my question's about public awareness and voter engagement. And with the intention to lower the voting age to 16 being confirmed by government, what are your plans to engage with young Londoners to increase general voting literacy and awareness of the mayoral and assembly elections, and both types of assembly elections?
Well, I'm going to duck that slightly, I'm afraid, Assembly Member Russell, by saying that we say that we'll have some public awareness campaign. We're going to address this stuff in 2026. Just as an immediate aside, clearly the fact that these will be the first GLA mayoral elections where 16 and 17-year-olds can vote feels like we always have these interesting sessions with our colleagues on the comms team who come up with new ideas or new designs for how we're going to run an awareness campaign. And the fact that 16 and 17-year-olds have the vote would feel like an obvious angle to me. But I guess I don't want to prejudge that till we've had the time to look at the options. And to understand, I should also say, one, that the legislation is actually passed, and two, what the Electoral Commission are doing, because the other thing that's always worth saying, and you'll know this, is that, of course, they've got deeper pockets, frankly, than us, and bigger budgets. So I think we're always very concerned to ensure that we align our work with their work, and we've worked very productively in 2024 to that effect.
I mean, we don't actually know yet which election will be the first where the 16 and 17-year-olds can vote. Mm-hmm. Because we're waiting for the timetable. I think we're all assuming it'll be 27, but we don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not impossible that 28 is in fact the first year, mm-hmm. which would be interesting in itself. There'll be a huge amount of profile mm-hmm. then, but I think our working assumption is that it would have already been in place for 27. But just to stress, we've no idea of the timetable.
So this is something that really needs planning for, because you've got new voters, 16, 17-year-olds, who need to be inducted in the whole idea of having a vote in a big citywide election. But we've also got the reintroduction of second preference vote for mayor, which needs careful explanation. And then most importantly is distinguishing between the two different types of assembly votes. And the description last time was not clear for the London-wide assembly vote, because it described you voting for your London-wide member, and you're not voting for a London-wide member, you're potentially voting for London-wide members. And it needs some real thought about how to describe that better. And I remember I shared a video from Australia that actually described it quite well. And what I hope is that we don't end up leaving that work to work out how to describe these voting systems well to the last minute, and we end up not doing it properly again. So can we see some ongoing work on that from whoever is going to be managing the comms on it, so that there's a chance to actually have some back and forth and to really think, can we really optimise this so that everyone really understands what each of those different ballot papers is for and how it works?
No, 100%. I'm smiling at one of the elections team members because I was saying exactly this just the other day, that when we flip over to 2026, which is only in a few weeks' time, we must start work on these areas. We cannot leave it to the last moment and be squashed. Because, as you say, Assemblymember Russell, we've got all of that. But the reinstate. I mean, we're talking about the reinstatement of the second preference as if it's sort of normal. I mean, we've had one election without it. We're going back to what is normal for GLA elections. But of course, it is a change from last year. And again, it was only 7 years ago, where there was last a second preference for mayor, same as the cybersecurity point. So we have an awful lot to get across.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Got Assemblymember Best next.
Thank you. Just coming on to the second preference voting system as well. Obviously, back in 2021, the last time we had this, spoiled votes would have come in fourth place, beating the Liberal Democrats. There was 114,000 spoiled votes. And I know this has been blamed on a confusing paper. I don't think that's a good enough explanation. You go back to 2016, there were still 50,000 spoiled votes. That's far too many. I think when you see the reasons, as I said, when you're at a count, you can see they're clearly not spoiled in protest, they're spoiled in confusion and error. How are we going to tackle that to make sure that we don't have a system where we disenfranchise a large number of the voting public?
So that's another thing that's absolutely top of mind. If we're going back to electronic, we're going back to the second preference vote, we have to do all we can to not end up in that position that we got into in 21. There were a number of factors related to it. One was that at the time, the e-count arrangements that we had determined the size of the ballot paper that was built into the procurement. And in 2021, remember, that was the year where you only needed 2 signatures per borough, or whatever it was, to stand as mayor, and we had more mayoral candidates than we had ever seen before. And the crux of the problem was a large number of candidates on a restricted size of paper. So the first thing that we are doing is making sure that through the e-count procurement process, there will be no restriction on the size of the ballot paper, so that we'll have much more flexibility about that. I mean, that's what caught us in the end. And we were too far down the process when the requirements, subscriber requirements changed, and we had candidates, more candidates than we'd ever had before. So that's where it starts. It starts with removing the inflexibilities that we were fighting with in 2021. And then it also continues with some sort of deep thought about how we design the ballot paper for 2028 and what we do if we have X mayoral candidates, Y mayoral candidates, Z mayoral candidates in sort of ever large numbers, so that we've really thought through every scenario. I think, it was a hard lesson in 2021, and we don't want to get there again. But I think there are things that we've learned from that. We're doing what we can to make sure that we have the greatest possible flexibility, because, of course, we only know how many candidates we've got right up against the election.
Yeah, I think given what happened in 2021 was actually, I think, one of the biggest electoral muck-ups in history, to see that many people disenfranchised. And with that in mind, is it worth this time doing more testing around the ballot paper with the public, literally seeing what works, what people understand, and kind of testing what comes out?
Yes, and we did that for 24, and we'll do it again for 28.
Thank you. And then Assemblymember Georgiou.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I mean, on the back of your exchange with Assembly Member Russell, I could have read it somewhere, I could have misread it. I'm pretty sure the government's intention is to go for the next general with 16, 17-year-olds. I mean, they haven't been abundantly clear, I agree with you, as to when they want to do it. But obviously, I'm sure in your discussions with MHCLG as the legislation comes forward, that will become clearer. Once again, on the point that Assembly Member Russell was making about education, whenever a bunch of civil servants try to engage with young people, it's always sort of like watching your dad dance at a wedding. You know, it's people think they're cool and engaging and things like that. And perhaps one suggestion to take back is that once you do have an educational package to go out to all voters as well as younger voters, that, you know, perhaps you present it to the committee. And, you know, if we could have some input, I don't know whether that's appropriate or not as politicians. No, I don't know if it's appropriate or not as politicians. But, I think these things are interesting to see, or perhaps don't run it by us, market test it to see, focus group it, see if people actually understand what we're talking about. Because let's be honest, 25 years after the creation of the London Assembly, you ask most Londoners who their local assembly member is, maybe apart from some members to my left or my right, they may know who they are, but let's be honest, they don't. So, I'm just trying to say, let's market test properly, because clearly what we've done over the last 25 years hasn't worked.
Well, so we can't share it with you all. Most of you will be standing as candidates. That would be completely inappropriate.
Of course,
We always market test our material. I think the question here is, are we going to have a brand new set of, relatively young voters voting for the very first time? We don't know yet. But, putting out the right material for, the widest audience anybody ever has to approach, an 18-year-old to somebody, in their 90s voting, we'll market test that. We do our best. We don't spend millions and millions and millions, because the GLA hasn't got millions. Remember, this is all funded by us. And although I absolutely accept we have a responsibility in building awareness, it's not just our job. Lots of other players in this, including political parties and agents and candidates. But I'm not downplaying our role, but we are only part of that.
No, and I think, Mary, I completely accept that response. And, it's not your primary function. And as I say, but I think it's good to know that proper market testing has gone on. But then again, I'd question the value for money on that, given that we haven't seen much shift, let's be honest, on turnout, awareness of what an assembly member does or is, let alone how you vote for them. So, perhaps, procuring around who actually does our focus grouping might be a better exercise in that case.
Yes, but I think also, so our job is to maximise turnout, make sure people know there's an election going on, they know how to vote, and then when they do vote, their vote is counted accurately and the result is accurate. I think in terms of understanding what the Assembly does, we will start that work early next year, but it's day in, day out work by the Assembly that is helping Londoners understand what the Assembly does. You
absolutely,
sit for,
thank you, Mary.
most weeks a
I'm
year.
just conscious of time, and actually, absolutely, that should be the business as usual of the organisation and of all of us responsibility in terms of what we do as well. That isn't for once every 4 years, all on your shoulders on top of the other work that you do. I'm just going to bring in Assembly Member Duval, because he hasn't had a chance to ask a question on this yet, and then I'll close up. Thank you.
So, well, first of all, let's say that you've stepped up and met every challenge in the past, and there's an acceptance that we have to move to electronic voting because of the changes that government now require us to go back, and also pressure from political groups wanting data arising from these elections. I mean, let's be clear about that, of what we want to do. We do need to address Assembly members' best issue. I think there was a misunderstanding and terminology about some of those issues, but I think that can be easily addressed by an exchange of maybe letters and clarity about what those issues are. One of the prime issues in these elections is about primacy. Who's in charge? Who's taking instructions? Who's deciding on their own? Have we resolved this issue? Is government supporting you, as in the civil servants supporting you in the asks? Do those in boroughs that have important roles and duties that they carry out on our behalf, accepting the primacy of the GLA over its election process around where it is in terms of the neutral civil service? Where have you got to on that? Is there clarity? How are you dealing with the robber barons?
So, as I've said, you know, all 14 CROs have signed up to this.
Impressive.
So,
yes.
you know, that's where I am, and I'm really pleased about that. And I think they do accept the primacy of it. We've had a good debate about this, but every single one of them has signed up to it. And I think if we are able to count electronically as we are planning, and we do it on the single site as we are planning, we will be very directive about how each of the 14 counts is done, and that all becomes very, very much easier.
Okay.
And then on government, I mean, I think I've said, you know, those officials that we work with are being very supportive, but we do want them to deliver this freedom from mixing. I think that's going to be an interesting test. We really, really want that delivered. At some point, we'll need to get into conversations with them about what if it's a combined election and what that means. Because, of course, in those circumstances, I lose my primacy. And, of course, it's the returning officers at parliamentary level who take that on. But again, you know, I feel at the moment, I feel that relationships are very good, not just at the senior level, but in all the teams as well. That's, you know, huge, really, really important work has been done by the London team here, Alex, and people in the gallery. And, you know, I'm feeling quite confident at the moment about the understanding at boroughs that, yes, my role, the returning officer role, is the primary role here.
And just lastly, from our point of view, there are some details that you can't share with us and it wouldn't be appropriate, but we do need to know that these issues are being dealt with in that sense and that you've got a plan. So the single venue sounds fine, okay, until there's a problem with the single venue. So that you will have a plan B and that we're not putting all our eggs into one basket and we find out as we get near to the final hours or days there is some problem here. Because the nature of, and I think you do understand, I think very well about the reputational damage if we get these elections wrong. And that's always been in the back of our minds when we've undertaken it. And I think you and your team, I can't thank you enough for what you had to do in terms of the manual count and the way it was conducted. Last time we're in a slightly different situation now, so well done to that. But, you know, everyone needs to understand what it means if things do go wrong or are badly. You did the result on time, given that we finally got there. It was a bit of a squeaky bum time, but you did it, and well done to you in doing that. We need it to happen again.
No, we're acutely aware of how important the whole event is to the GLA's reputation and the Mayor's reputation, the Assembly's reputation. I mean, that's what drives us.
Thank you very much. And I think just to wrap up, I think the last elections, clearly I think all of us on this side should have been happy with the outcomes of that election and how it was counted for obvious reasons. But I think just to say, certainly the efficiency of which it was the operation last time around and making sure that I think it's probably the first time we've declared that quickly in terms of the results on time was absolutely phenomenal, and clearly you've given a lot of thought in terms of what happens in 2028 and kicking off at a very early stage to make sure that you have Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C ready and procured or prepared to the right level. So huge thank you to both of you and to the teams, and also of course to the constituency returning officers who work with you to make sure that everything happens on the ground within each of our constituencies to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible. So we've reached the end of our discussion on this. Thank you to both of you again for joining us today and for your answers to our questions. And can I just finally ask the committee to note the report and the answers that we received? Thank you. And what we'll do is we'll just take a short break, but under Standing Order 2.2D, which everyone will know off the top of their head, but I propose to take item 7 next as the next item of business, which will mean that when we come back from a short break, we'll be discussing the proposals for the Oxford Street Mayoral Development Corporation shared services arrangements. So we'll come back in about 3 minutes, just to allow for a changeover. Thank you. Growth and the GLA. We also have Molly Strauss, who's head of Oxford Street Transformation Programme. Rebecca Arnold, our Assistant Director for Committee and Member Services. Nigel Maskarahanas, who is Deputy Director for Treasury and Shared Services Delivery at London Treasury. And David Rowe, who is Director of Investment Delivery and Planning at the Transport for London. So thank you all for joining us. So the first question that we have for you today is to Rebecca and to Nigel. And I'd like to ask you both, what are the anticipated impacts of the proposed shared service arrangements with the OSDC, and how will you resource any additional work?
Do you want me to go first? So thank you members. I am expecting, so obviously the report before you is consulting on the principle of 2 new shared services arrangements, but as you would expect in the process of looking at that, obviously I've looked at what resourcing is likely to be required, but the sequence of events is likely to go, this consultation, if you all agree, then we move on to execution of a shared services agreement, which is, sets out the predication of charging for the arrangement, and then I look at an actual restructure to put in resources. So, but based on my experience, what I'm expecting is one additional post. So at the moment, there's a big shared services committee services team, which is just over 25 posts. It's 25 and a bit. Those posts provide a service to the London Assembly, a range of mayoral boards, TfL board and committees, LLDC board and committees, OPDC board and committees out of those 25 posts. They look after between 350 and 400 formal meetings a year. That excludes pre-meets, site visits, agenda planning meetings, and that's kind of what you get out of the 25 posts. I'm expecting this to add, my resourcing is predicated on adding, say, between 20 and 30 meetings, and based on the economies of scale I already have, my prediction is that I only need 1 more post to do that. When I enter into a shared services agreement, this one would be based on a recharge model. So effectively the organisation only pays for what it costs me to deliver, and effectively that's likely to be 1 more post and a bit of software, and the GLA also charges a corporate charge. So 1 more post. At the moment I'm predicting I would probably put that at grade 9, but obviously that's subject to our formal restructure process, and the outcome I would hope is a robust, resilient and efficient clerking service to the Development Corporation.
Thank you. And in terms of the corporate costs that you talked about, there is effectively an overhead, because obviously there's management, there's other...
There is. I mean, so we charge for 2 things as an organisation. We charge a standard corporate charge, which is set organisationally, which I kind of don't choose, and is to do with, I guess, the kind of cost of housing and providing IT to the person that we take on. But also within the staffing cost, which I pass on, is the on cost. So also obviously pension, national insurance, all that kind of business. I don't at the moment charge a specific cost for, say, my time. Under the GLA Act, I'm not allowed to make a profit, and at the moment my judgment is that it is not sufficiently taking away from my time that I would add in, I would factor that in, a charge for say, me or other staffing, other management costs. But I guess there could be a model over time where I would change my view about the level of management needed, and I might need an extra post or pass for post or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be standard for most of these sorts of charges to be full cost recovery, which would include a proportion of management costs as well, and obviously on costs, etc. So, okay, I'll pass on to Assembly Member Baker.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm not sure who wants to pick it up. I'll throw it out there, as it's quite a wide question, which is about what progress has been made on plans for both the development and the pedestrianisation since the Mayor notified the Secretary of State of his intention. And so his intention was obviously to have it set up by the 1st of January. So are we on track for that?
I'll probably begin.
Thanks.
Others may need to pick up on some detail around me. And the short answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
The legislation to establish, it requires secondary legislation to establish the Development Corporation. That was laid on the 5th of November. That's in line with the timescales that are required for the Development Corporation to come into being sort of formally from the 1st of January, which was what we always said we were aiming for. And alongside that, as members of the Assembly will know, we have been doing a lot of work to staff up the Development Corporation, ready for its as it comes into existence and takes on its duties. The Mayor has identified his preferred candidate, the Assembly for the chair of the Development Corporation. The Assembly's held its confirmation hearing. Not absolutely sure at what point he then becomes appointed, but I mean, I think you voted overall in favour of his appointment, so that is coming down the track. We are in the process of recruiting a chief executive. We're in the process of recruiting a chief finance officer, which is the other statutory role for the Development Corporation. We have a team of, in terms of the operational roles within the organisation, we've got a team of 11 in place at the moment, and a number of other recruitments either underway or soon to be getting underway. So, there will be a functioning organisation in place on the 1st of January. We are looking at some interim arrangements as well, where it will take time for people to arrive in post. And alongside that, we're making good progress behind the scenes with, low profile but important stuff like having payroll in place and IT systems and so on. And we have appointed the architecture and design firms who will be developing the detailed proposals for the transformed street, and David and his team at TfL are making good progress in being ready to go out to consultation later this year on the traffic changes that would be required to facilitate pedestrianisation if and when that happens.
Thanks. I've got some sort of related questions, but no, Molly, please do come in. You may answer some of them. Yes.
I was just going to add a couple points that we also just today have launched recruitment for a head of people for the new corporation, and we're also out recruiting various board members, which I think we haven't yet mentioned.
Yeah. So yes, in terms of those sort of timescales, because obviously things are moving at pace in terms of, as you say, sort of the plans, architects, traffic plans, stuff like that. But I mean, there's very little chance that senior people will be in place on the 1st of January. So what's the contingency in terms of, obviously people are going to come in to run the organisation, and lots going to have moved ahead by this stage. What sort of contingency have you got to make sure the whole process moves forward smoothly? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing to say is we have people, although we won't have all of those sort of the senior director, there has always been a balance here to strike here is probably the first thing to say, between populating the organisation in its entirety versus giving the new chair and the chief executive, when he or she is appointed, space and flexibility to design an organisation that reflects the way in which they think it needs to be set up to deliver the project. So we have always been trying to balance those two, which is why we were never planning to be and won't be in a position to have all of those those sort of director level roles filled for the 1st of January. Yeah. Nonetheless, there are senior roles beneath that are in place and are filled in each of the key areas that the Development Corporation takes responsibility for. So we have a senior planner, we have a small team working on the placemaking and design aspects of it, who are managing that contract. We have an interim head of finance who is a qualified accountant who is setting up all of the systems around the finances of the organisation. We are in the process of recruiting a head of people, but we're getting good support from the GLA's people function in the meantime. So I have no doubt, just as, and Molly's team has 9 people in it, or has 11 people in it already, and will continue. So I have no doubt that the process will keep going. We will continue to get good support from TfL. We are looking at interim solutions for the kind of chief executive and chief finance officer roles, should there be a significant gap between when the MDC is established and when those people, once the roles have been filled, are able to be available. Clearly, the GLA Group's chief finance officer will continue to provide oversight in the meantime, and I will be providing oversight in my role as Executive Director for Good Growth, because I will still have a degree of responsibility for the project. So I think we are building a team. Yeah. We are making sure that there's capacity where it's needed, but equally we are trying not to take a set of decisions that really should sit with the Chief Executive and the Chair and the board members as they come into place.
Understood. Okay, the Chair told me to stop just briefly because I think I'm running out of time. I think I'm right in saying that looking across the Chief Executives of the other MDCs, this is being advertised as a higher salary than we have for the other MDCs. Obviously, from the outside, it's certainly much smaller. What's the thinking behind how that's been set and the sort of responsibilities parallel? I appreciate that's a very, very large question, and I probably don't have very much time, but I want to raise it.
I think clearly, as with any recruitment of this kind, the salary expectation was set in conversation with the expert consultants who we've been looking at, who have a sense of working with, who have a sense of the market for roles of this kind. I think the critical points in relation to this role are not really the size of the organisation, but the profile of the project, the sort of stakeholder and relationship challenges, the pace at which the Mayor is keen to move. And I think, the need to bring together a broad range of skill sets a broad range of skill sets in what is actually quite a novel and unprecedented project in terms of development corporations, while OPDC and LLDC have very significant, are larger organisations with very significant development programmes. Those are well understood projects that are, with teams supporting the chief executive who are, who really understand the way in which you deliver them, and those kind of development programmes are set up very clearly. There has never been a moment where where a development corporation has been used to deliver a project of exactly this kind. So the need to actually be able to shape how that will work has been part of what we've been thinking about. But equally, while I think the salary is slightly above where we advertised OPDC most recently, I mean, they're not fundamentally out of line. We are not, the salary that's been proposed in this role is it's not double the salaries for other MDC.
No, then we really would.
It's in broadly the same ballpark.
Okay. That's fine. Thanks very much. Thanks. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Best next.
Thank you. I don't know who wants to take this, but what is the purpose of the MDC? What are the goals?
Do you want to go ahead, Molly?
I'm happy to. There's a number of purposes of the MDC, but primarily its goal is the transformation of Oxford Street.
Sorry, I mean more concrete things than transformation of Oxford Street into when I say goals.
I'm just reiterating the sort of stated goals that we've published previously about what an MDC can do. Phil, I don't know if you want to speak more specifically. Exactly as Molly says, the purpose of any development corporation is the regeneration of the area that it covers. And in this instance, by regeneration, we mean turning round the fortunes of Oxford Street as a key asset for the capital and for the country.
Sorry, Phil. Sorry, Molly. I need something more concrete. What are the goals of the MDC? What are you going to do? Why are we setting this MDC up? Not with
Well,
superlatives about we'll transform it.
No,
not saying
yeah.
that Oxford Street's down on its luck, which it isn't. Let's say actually what concrete are you going to do?
Well, we are going to. I mean, I am being very careful. I have to be careful about how we say that because we have consulted on the principle of pedestrianisation, but we still need to consult on the details associated with that. But the Mayor's expectation is that we will be, carrying out a significant capital project to make Oxford Street a better environment for shoppers, for visitors, for others. We will also be taking over the planning responsibilities for Oxford Street, so we want to be able to curate the street to be as effective a visitor destination, a retail environment.
It is a visitor destination as it stands. You teetered on giving me one goal of pedestrianisation. Phil, can you just tell me what the MDC is going to achieve? And please just don't say it's going to transform, we're going to regenerate, we're going to take control of the planning. Tell me, in 10 years' time, what will it have achieved?
I'm not entirely sure what is more concrete.
Okay, how many houses are we going to build? Is it about residential development?
No, it's about making it a more effective visitor destination that generates more footfall, that generates more economic activity, and is a better shop window for London than Oxford Street is currently.
Will we be doing
more economic activity?
Retail development?
I think I just said that. More economic activity, more footfall.
So what are the kind of numbers? Where do you want things to be transformed? What kind of shops is it? Is it going to become larger, bigger, taller?
It's going to become more attractive for visitors, so more people come and use it.
How so?
I think that's why we've appointed a really professional, really experienced chair who has a background in running major retail destinations, so he can start to define that and make that happen. I mean, that's why we are setting up an MDC, because as a set of public servants, our background is not creating visitor destinations, retail destinations. That's exactly why we've appointed Scott Parsons to be the chair of this organisation and to drive it forward.
Because let's be blunt about it, Phil. Let's get to it. The only thing that's come out about this is pedestrianisation. That's the only thing we're talking about. TfL have been handed the highway now. Yeah. They now own Oxford Street. Yeah. But what we're doing is we are appointing a £200,000 chief exec. We're hiring 50 staff to the MDC. We're going to funnel a load of money into that. And that does beg the question, if pedestrianisation is the big plan, why don't we just go on and get on and do it without the MDC? Why do we need the MDC? The MDC suggests more, but then when we come to that bit, it's hard to find something tangible.
Well, I think we've been reasonably clear all along. Once we've pedestrianised the street, TfL will deliver the capital works, but first of all, we need to deliver. It's not about TfL's experience in delivering. TfL's experience is in delivering capital projects. We need an organisation that can design the best possible retail experience, visitor experience, the best possible environment. And then we need to run it effectively. We are imagining that there will be just as when we closed it temporarily earlier this year, there were all kinds of events and things happening there. We imagine that we want Oxford Street to be somewhere that people come both to shop, but also that holds events, activations.
Did you just say we imagine Oxford Street as somewhere where people come to shop? I mean, you don't have to imagine it. Go down there now. Go down there today, Phil. You'll see it with your eyes.
Yes,
it's amazing.
And I said imagine someone comes to shop and somewhere that's a vibrant visitor destination, that's activated and exciting. And that, as we saw with the temporary closure earlier this year.
All those things exist at Oxford Street, which is, I think, why we beg the question of what are we trying to get from the MDC. And actually, you said earlier, I've got to be careful around this, but then you said just now, once we pedestrianise, making very clear.
Well, I wasn't quite careful enough.
That was actually everything else you said was as clear as mud, to be quite frank. But you came out with it there and just said, once we pedestrianise, making sure that's clear, which leads nicely onto the next question about how you'll be transparent and accountable and listen to the voice of local stakeholders.
I think we consulted widely on the proposal to set up an MDC and on the principle of pedestrianisation, as I said. The Oxford Street Transformation team have been engaging with business stakeholders, with local community stakeholders, with the local councils in the area, working closely with Westminster and Camden. We are going to be carrying out further consultations as the proposals are developed and as the Mayor comes to take his decisions on how to take this forward. That includes the consultation on any traffic changes that will be needed to facilitate pedestrianisation that's coming later this year, and in due course consultations on the detailed design of any proposals that we put forward. TfL have clearly been working in this area as well, and I think David would be keen to come in.
Yes, thank you. So following the previous consultation and the support that was shown for the principle of pedestrianisation, we have been working up plans for the changes that would be necessary in terms of traffic, highways, public transport to facilitate pedestrianisation. And the section that we're looking at is the section to the west, so it's Orchard Street to Great Portland Street. And in developing those proposals, we've been engaging with all the groups that you'd expect, both in terms of the business residents groups as well as user groups, to help us understand the key issues there and develop those proposals. And those proposals will be subject to public consultation later this year. So we're working through all the detail of that, and all of that will be shared. There will be very comprehensive plans around what it means for each of the different users, what it means for traffic in terms of journey times, what it means in terms of the redistribution of traffic and other considerations.
So suggesting that you are listening to the local councils and having good dialogue. So far, Westminster City Council requested an additional nomination on the board. That was denied by the GLA. The further request that both Camden and Westminster City Councils made was to have two separate planning authorities. That was again denied by the GLA. It does appear on the face of it that the councils aren't being listened to.
I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think we've been in ongoing. There have been some points that have been, as you say, that have been made that have come to a conclusion we need to take forward a different way. But we are in ongoing discussion. And Molly and her team are talking to their counterparts in Westminster and Camden on a weekly, if not daily, basis, around trying to make sure that we understand their perspective. We won't always agree, but that we are developing our plans in a way that recognises their concerns, but that tries to deliver the objectives that the Mayor has set for the project.
I was just going to add, not to duplicate, but that those weekly, in some cases, conversations are across all aspects of the MDCA, from planning to the sort of highways and public realm side, and we do have productive officer-to-officer conversation, find common ground on a daily basis.
Thanks. And just finally, obviously, we've already talked about, Phil, you mentioned the one-day pedestrian scheme. That was declared a roaring success by the Mayor off the back of 12 survey responses. When we're going forward with this, with those consultations, can we try and look to get slightly more engagement before going to the press and calling things a roaring success?
I mean, I can't speak for when the Mayor, how the Mayor chooses to engage with the press, but I mean, undoubtedly, we want to reach, a wide range of people and a large number of people in the consultations that we undertake. Where for the main consultation, Molly will know the exact numbers, but we had, I think, over 6,000 responses. There you go. And we'll continue to do that going forward. And we will also, be looking to build, proper evaluation into the long-term approach to how we go about doing this.
Just to add that on the activation itself, we've published a data report online that you can look at if you're interested in. There's hundreds of responses to various survey questions that fed into that data.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, I was there on the day, and I could feel what a roaring success it was, because you could literally hear how alive Oxford Street was on the day, and the thronging crowds, which I think, coming back to the point that you raised, Assemblymember Best, in terms of higher footfall, clearly in terms of being one of the purposes of driving this, we very much had that just on that one day, and clearly this is an opportunity to deliver that going forward. We are going to be moving on to some more questions around the consultation and pedestrianisation. So I won't say any more on that at the moment, but I'll pass on to Assemblymember Prince.
Thank you, Chair. This question is initially for David. How will TfL ensure that its upcoming consultation on highway and traffic proposals engages a wide and diverse range of voices?
That is absolutely the intention, yes. As I said, we have been engaging fully in preparation for that consultation with all relevant groups to help us understand the key issues locally and considerations around how we develop up those proposals. So that might be anything from the businesses in terms of deliveries and servicing, different user groups in terms of cyclist needs, taxis, private hire, bus users and so forth. But also, TfL has a very established processes in terms of how we undertake consultation and how we ensure that we reach out to as many groups as possible so that we can try and ensure that we get the best response and representative response for London. We very much intend to follow that methodology, as well as ensuring that we are actively promoting the consultation to try and encourage people to respond.
Well, I'm very disappointed to hear that you'll be following the usual process of TfL consultation, because we know how flawed and what a poor reputation it has for asking people a question and completely ignoring the answer, as we found with you, Les, but nonetheless, that's your choice, I guess. How long do you think the consultation will be open for?
We've not yet determined the length of the consultation. As I say, we're still working up the details of that, which will begin later this year, but we will ensure that we share that very broadly in terms of ensuring that people are aware of those deadlines to get responses back to us.
Will there be an EIA prior to anything? I just phrased that to give you a clue. We know that currently black cabs offer door-to-door for disabled or people who are challenged with walking. We know that LTNs have impaired their ability to deliver that service, and other restrictions that TfL have been placing on black cabs since this mayor took office. At the moment, if you are disabled and you order a black cab to your front door, you can be dropped off immediately outside the retailer or service of your choice in Oxford Street. Clearly, the plans that you have, even if you allow the crossing of Oxford Street, which I've seen in some previous plans, these people will be expected to walk tens, if not hundreds of metres to their destination. What consideration have you given to that, please?
So to answer your first question, yes, there will be an equalities impact assessment, and in developing up our detailed proposals, we've had an accessibility specialist working with us to provide advice, as well as engaging with advisory groups more broadly. And a part of the consideration is around where can we provide suitable facilities in terms of things like taxi pick-up, drop-off locations, bus stops, to minimise those distances, as well as look at what the necessary improvements might be from the surrounding roads. So if you have a bus stop on a parallel street, what does that mean in terms of the quality of the walking environment from that stop to Oxford Street? So all of that's been an important part of the development of the proposals, as well as the details around the bus routing and other matters.
Thank you. Will there be a post-implementation EIA as well?
So at the moment, the focus is on this detailed consultation. Anything beyond that is subject to the outcome of that and the next steps that are yet to be confirmed.
And what assurances can you give us in relation to the outcome of the consultation? What percentage of people would have to reject the consultation for you to actually accept the will of the people?
So the consultation is seeking responses around the proposals that we've put forward. Obviously, the consultation which was undertaken earlier this year, and the results were published in June, showed that on the question of pedestrianisation, of those that responded to that question, over 2/3 were supportive of the principle of pedestrianisation, and that's why the Mayor has asked us to develop up more detailed proposals. The detailed proposals are obviously seeking feedback in relation to the bus routing changes that we're looking at, the servicing arrangements, the changes to the highway layouts. So what we want to do is ensure the plans best represent how we can deliver the potential change whilst ensuring that we minimise any adverse impacts. So I can't give you a percentage. That's not the purpose of the consultation. The purpose of the consultation is obviously to help us understand whether we have understood and adequately addressed the issues.
And will you be taking on board the views of the local authority in your consultation?
So we absolutely, I mean, we've been working with Westminster in terms of the development of the proposals. Whilst Oxford Street has been redesignated as a TfL road, the surrounding roads are obviously the responsibilities of Westminster and Camden, and therefore the work with them is around whether there's any collective changes. I made reference to the fact that if you have a bus stop on an adjacent street, you want to ensure you've improved the condition of the walking environment between those two locations. So we are working very closely with them, and we will obviously listen very carefully to the responses that they provide when we go through the formal consultation as well.
One point of clarity. Did you say you won't be conducting an EIA afterwards? I mean, because there's two things in there. There's the effect on the equality, but also the effect on the actual ecology in the area, the pollution levels.
I didn't say we wouldn't be. What I said was the focus at this point is the next stage of consultation in terms of the detailed proposals around the traffic, highway and public transport changes that we'd be working to make, and we haven't determined the steps beyond that.
Will you take that into consideration then?
I'm happy to, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you. And I attended the big day in the summer, and I thought it was really well organised and seemed to give a really good impression of, goodness, if it's going to be that busy every day of the week, then they're going to need a bigger Oxford Street. But it definitely seemed to be a very popular event. My question is about consultation, which can be very noisy, and you can, and we live in a time of very divided discourse. And so I'm just wondering if you're learning from some of the TfL consultation work that I gather has been going on around the A232 in Croydon and Bromley, where 24 local residents took part in a 2-hour evening workshop using a representative cross-section of the local community, with participants being paid for their time to get involved in that. And I just wondered if you're thinking about using any similar approaches in the Oxford Street consultation process to kind of ensure that you're engaging with a wide and diverse range of voices and not just the people who have time to participate in these consultations.
So I'm very aware of the consultation that took place in Croydon and Bromley on the A232. That is a scheme that I've been heavily involved in. There are particular safety as well as bus issues there that we're seeking to address along the corridor. That is a pre-consultation process that we're engaged in there. That's helping us to refine proposals, and subject to the outcome of that, we may go back with a formal consultation. The arrangements at Oxford Street are slightly different. This has obviously been a two-stage consultation in that the principal has already been consulted on. And as I say, what we've done in the intervening period before we formally go out to consultation on the details is work very, very closely with residents groups, other community groups, businesses and interest groups to ensure we understand the issues there and taking those on board in terms of the development of the proposals.
So, sorry.
I was only going to add that it's too early to say exactly how this would roll out, because they're just getting started on their work, and the timings and the nature of any consultation are yet to be decided. But clearly part of what we were looking for when we were appointing Hawkins, Brown and East and the consortia that are working with them, that will be working with them on the detailed design of the scheme, was firms with experience on these kind of complex projects that involve a wide range of stakeholders, and that's both local communities but also the broader group of people and businesses who use and visit Oxford Street, so that they get, and of how you bring those voices into the process. So
great. And just double checking, 2 voices that haven't been mentioned: older people and disabled people. Those are presumably in your groups that you're consulting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Thank
100%.
you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up is Assembly Member Hina Bukhari.
Thank you. So Assembly Member Russell talked about the Oxford Street event, which is the what I wanted to focus on as well. And I have been hearing from residents about the noise of that particular event. And so I think, we've probably had some resident groups probably contacting you as well about the impact that event had. So could you give me a little bit of feedback about the event and the responses that you got from the local area and residents groups, specifically on that particular event?
I'm happy to take that and to say, actually, you're right that we've received a very small handful of concerned resident contact, but actually the numbers were very small. So if you're hearing more than we're hearing, please do pass that on to us. But the level of concern from residents that directly contacted the GLA or came to us through other sources around noise, around traffic, et cetera, was very, very limited. And we've also learned from TfL that the traffic impacts on the day were also very contained. And we can come back with further detail that's actually published already in that data document that I mentioned, that in fact the impact on the surrounding streets was not notable.
What kind of consultation did you do before arranging the event itself? Did you go to these particular resident groups and associations to say that we're going to be having this event and when it was going to happen, and how did you work with them?
So ahead of the event, we had an events company that was charged with the sort of standard practice of rolling out that event. I can't say off the top of my head exactly who they spoke with. I can come back to you on that. But they did, for instance, engage businesses in the area. I know that they undertook a letter drop to residents. So there was absolutely contact. The degree to which there were meetings, I can come back and let you know. So, I mean, obviously that we know some of the positives that came from it. 67% surveyed shops of the street said that there were higher sales, 45% higher in terms of footfall. But what were the things that you learned that didn't go too well and that you need to improve on? I think we're still processing the learnings from that event, and we'll be, with our public realm team for quite some time. So the firms that Phil mentioned, Hawkins, Brown and East, who are leading on the design, are taking on board that feedback. So we'll sort of over time see how that influences the design. I think it's absolutely clear that that was a demonstration day of what Oxford Street could be like in a kind of festival mode. I don't think anybody expects Oxford Street to be like that every single day. So absolutely, there's things like the way that the hoardings were set up. We wouldn't expect that to be the case in a long-term pedestrianized Oxford Street. That was to accommodate a one-day event that showcased all that Oxford Street could be. So I wouldn't expect, that we would be mirroring exactly the setup of that event in a future pedestrianized.
Yeah, I think there probably would be some concern if it was like a festival every day, day in Oxford Street, wouldn't it? Not that I hate festivals, I love festivals, but I mean, I think residents may be concerned that might be happening. I want to know about whether you're considering arranging more events in the future.
As Phil said, one of the purposes of the MDC is indeed activation of Oxford Street, but that will be the gift of the new MDC to determine what that event schedule or event, timeline might look like. And absolutely, the chief exec and other senior leaders at the new MDC will be determining that program of events. But yes, that is the hope, that Oxford Street will continue to be activated in various ways.
But that's not in the near future. That's when...
Well, the MDC will be established on the 1st of January,
established.
so we're not
Right.
expecting the GLA to organise any events between now and the 1st of January.
Okay.
But we're not expecting further events to wait for the completion of any pedestrianisation works, if that's what we end up doing. I mean, part of what we have asked the architects to look at is how this could be, how a scheme could be rolled out in a phased basis, so you're creating opportunities for the use of the space as that goes on. So I mean, while you're absolutely right, it's not going to be on the 1st of January. I think what we want to make sure is that over the period where any changes to Oxford Street are happening, it is still a vibrant space where people want to come and spend time.
I think some Assembly members have already made it very clear that the need for the consultation and working with local groups is so key, particularly the most vulnerable groups, as Assembly Member Russell mentioned, older Londoners and disabled Londoners, and the need for openness and transparency has also been raised as well. So if there is any future events, that approach will be open and transparent. All the findings will also be open and transparent. And will the costings be also open and transparent?
I think the finances of the MDC will be transparent in the same way that the finances of all of our functional bodies are transparent and available to scrutiny by the Assembly. I think part of coming back, the reason for establishing an MDC so that you have an organisation with this kind of real focus on how Oxford Street is developed and operated and how the space is used is to develop the capacity that we can't have within the GLA sat at a distance from the street to actually develop those relationships with the groups representing those vulnerable Londoners, with local residents, with the business community, with young people, which is another group that we haven't mentioned. To keep them involved and keep them informed and enable their views to be taken into account as the project develops.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you. Just picking up on lessons learned from the event in the summer, I was really pleased to see lots of toilets on the day and also a changing places toilet, because that really does make a huge difference in terms of making it an accessible event. I wondered if there are any lessons you learned about locations for toilets or kind of anything that kind of is that you're taking forward.
I think the short answer is we heard lots of positive feedback about the fact that there were good toilet facilities, and we're feeding that into our public realm design process. So no sort of outcomes yet in terms of what the future scheme would look like, but toilets are absolutely on our agenda as a key thing to consider when we are developing those public realm designs.
Thank you very much. It's very reassuring.
Thank you. Assembly Member Georgiou.
I feel like I've missed out on this public event. I mean, I was washing my hair on that day, so I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you.
I had the same problem.
Will the Assembly Member Prince, I agree. Will the consultation also address the significant crime and public safety risks of pedestrianisation? Otherwise, how will this be dealt with? So I don't know if David or Phil wants to take that, or Molly.
I'm happy to take that. Certainly, the issues around crime, public safety are central in terms of us considering how we would create a design which creates a safe environment as part of that. And that's public safety in relation to what may happen in the street environment itself, but also things like any hostile vehicle mitigations that we would need to plan in, what it means in terms of the hours of servicing and how you would accommodate that. So we've sought to address that at each stage in terms of the development of the proposals. And when you see the proposals, hopefully that will bring that to life in terms of how we've addressed those issues.
Yeah, I'm just trying to square, obviously, so these... I'll choose my words carefully because, I'm sure lots of children listen to this. These people on mopeds that steal Rolexes and smash up Selfridges and whatever else, can easily get away. So you can't entirely shut off all vehicle access to the site. So this is what I'm saying. Have you had discussions with the Met, the police, how to mitigate these factors? You know, have you considered that yet, or TBD?
So there have been discussions with various bodies in relation to the security considerations. I'm obviously not in a position to go into details on a lot of those matters, but it is central to the design proposals and how we will operate the street on a day-to-day basis. It's important for people to understand that it won't be a sterilised area in terms of from this point to this point is pedestrianised. I talked about sort of walking routes through. You will also have north-south routes for traffic, so there are points where traffic will cross and pedestrians will cross, although there will be much improved conditions in terms of those points. Similarly, there will be hours where we allow loading and deliveries on Oxford Street because some of the premises on Oxford Street do not have off-site facilities. So all of those considerations have been built in as we develop these detailed proposals.
Yeah, I just think, you know, I'm trying to wrap my head around what you said, because I think the Met changed their position on, and now they rightfully smash these people off their mopeds with the police vehicles. You know, I'm just thinking, how can that be an occurrence? You know, because either then effectively you're looking at the northern or the southern end, but if the police can't go through, they end up losing these criminals as they're going round. So I think that's part of my concern. You know, moped gangs are still a thing in London. Obviously, Oxford Street already is not immune to it. It's just, could this not make it worse, this pedestrianisation scheme?
My understanding, and David, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that emergency services will still have would still, under the proposals, have access to the street itself.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, but if it's pedestrianised, they won't be able to go 50 miles down the road, you know, 50 miles an hour to catch these people, or whatever the speed is.
No, they won't be travelling 50 miles an hour down Oxford Street. That is true. But part of that design proposal is ensuring that there is constant available access for emergency services should they need it. So it's been a core design consideration. And obviously there's a lot of lessons that London has learnt. Strand Aldwych is a good example of a space that has been pedestrianised fairly recently in terms of the access arrangements that exist there, as well as other longer-term sites such as Covent Garden and so forth.
Thank you. And I think, I mean, you referred to mopeds there, Assemblymember Georgie, but obviously I think it's only e-bikes that would legitimately be able to go up and down Oxford Street at the moment, and actually they would be removed, obviously, under these current proposals.
I don't think these people follow the rules, Mr. Chairman. I think that's my point. Yeah,
I mean, immediately they wouldn't be able to go up and down on their e-bikes, so that would immediately be, you know, something that the police could catch them out for in terms of an offence without having to catch them for other offences they might want to commit. Just to close off that one very, very quickly, David, you've mentioned about opening the consultation before the end of the year. Is that right? And have you got a time frame for that? Because I don't think we've got that pinned down so far.
That's the intention, yes, before the end of the year. I can't give you an exact date at this point. We are still finalising those proposals, but we are hopeful that it will be as soon as possible into the period before.
And the obvious question, therefore, is then obviously similarly to consultations that happen over the summer, it'll be Christmas period, and people have other things on their mind. Perhaps Oxford Street, hopefully at the top of their mind in terms of where they go and do their shopping. But will that consultation therefore go into next year, and once the MDC has set up?
Yes, it will go into the new year. We are keen to ensure, as I say, we get as many responses as possible. We're very conscious of the fact that people have other priorities on their mind during that period, so we want to ensure there's lots of opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much. Assembly Member McCartney.
Thank you. My question's for Phil, and it's around funding. We know the initial costs of setting up the MDC were accounted for in this year's budget, but the Mayor has said that the first phase of pedestrianisation will take approximately £150 million, and he talked about looking at alternative revenue streams. Can I ask, has any further thinking been done about that, or is that being left to the MDC when they come into operation?
There is some ongoing work looking at considering potential revenue streams. There's also ongoing work to further understand the costs associated with the MDC as it gets up and running, and the costs, and part of what we were working through in terms of the design work around the proposed pedestrianisation scheme is to fully understand the costs associated with developing and delivering that, and all of that work will inform the budget that we will be publishing as part of the GLA group budget process later at the beginning of next year. I think in many ways, the income streams, however, although we have begun some early work, I think that is a longer-term process as we understand, what the newly designed street might look like, what that means in terms of the potential, for example, for advertising revenue, for events and activations and brand partnerships and so on, and the different ways in which, like any MDC, the Oxford Street Development Corporation will be able to generate income that contributes to its costs.
Right, and are we looking then, and we obviously have a budget gap at the moment in the GLA budget of around 20 million, but this is a priority. Do you anticipate GLA having to support this ongoing, or will it be coming out of TfL funds?
It's treated as part of the GLA group budget process, so there will, just as there is a separate budget for the Old Oakham Park Rural Development Corporation and a separate budget for the London Legacy Development Corporation at Stratford, there will be a separate budget for the Oxford Street Development Corporation.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Assembly Member Georgiou.
Phil, are you expecting, so obviously £150 million of taxpayer money just to brick over some tarmac, are you expecting all of that to come from the GLA budget?
That's what we are. That's the question that we're working through and trying to answer at the moment. I couldn't say exactly what the funding stack would be for that work at this stage.
Right, thank you. Okay, and last question from me. Are you expecting local businesses to contribute to the cost of pedestrianisation? If so, what proportion and what mechanism are you using for considering this?
It is certainly the case, as I understand it, local businesses have previously supported the idea of contributing to earlier proposals for improving Oxford Street. We haven't begun any negotiations of that kind yet. It could be part of the funding approach, along with philanthropic contributions and along with the kind of income streams that we're talking about. But it's work that's still underway. It might not be that that's the right way to try and fund this scheme, and that's something we will have to come back to the Assembly with when the work has been completed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Assembly Member Russell.
Yes, just in terms of securing outside funding, how are you going to protect the public purpose of Oxford Street as a street, rather than it feeling like it's been sold off to particular corporate interests?
I think the only answer I can give, really, which is generally the case, is the Mayor is very clear about the fact that Oxford Street is, London's high street and the nation's high street, and it needs to continue to operate as a street for all Londoners, and that will be at the forefront of our minds as we think about how to take this project forward.
Okay, and just very quickly, if Nigel wanted to come in, but in terms of the government's currently looking to do a business rate review, which obviously will impact in terms of it's looking to reduce the amount that potentially some of the high streets might pay. We're going to be all the business rates will come to the GLA in future. Is that likely to impact any of the questions that we've asked so far?
Unfortunately, Chair, I'm involved with Treasury Management, not business rates. So I can take that question away and get that answered for you from someone else in the GLA.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, we're going to take a very short break before we do, just to note the discussions that we've had so far today and thank our guests. Thank you very much. Again.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a very short break and then come back again. Welcome back, and we now move on to our discussion on London's new New Year's Eve fireworks event. So finish off the meeting with a bang. I'd like to welcome our guests who've joined us for this discussion in the chamber. So David Holly, who is Head of Events for London. We've got Katie Morrison, who is Interim Assistant Director for External Relations at the GLA. We've got Ralph Davison, who is the Rail Contingency Planning Lead and Transport for London. Trevor Jenner, who is the Event Liaison Manager. And online, we also have Dr. Tom Smith as well, who is our resident expert and will be helping with some of the environmental impact questions that we will potentially be asking this afternoon. I'll kick off very quickly. If you could let us know, don't all feel the need to come in on this one, but what's your assessment of last year's New Year's Eve event, fireworks event? What went well, what didn't go well? Perhaps David, thank you.
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to take this one. So the 2024 event, I'm pleased to say, was an overall success. We operationally, it was delivered smoother, and there was less issues that we dealt with. Not to say we didn't have issues, but there were less issues that we dealt with. It was watched by 10.3 million on the BBC, which is always good to hear, and it had a 63.3% share of the audience. And on social media, it had over 4.7 million views. So a really, really great tool for us to promote London and display that it's the best city in the world. In particular, one of the key successes for us was that for the first time we were able to stop breaches into the ticketed viewing areas, which was something that we have constantly had to look at, and it's been one of our constant challenges. You may have seen some footage in the media that may have appeared to show people pushing through a barrier line, but what that actually didn't show was that it was a soft check area. And actually, when those people pushed past that barrier line, they actually then were presented with a 3-metre hoarded wall, which they couldn't get through. So we are absolutely looking at our plans for next year to make sure that we manage that soft check better and that there isn't a stampede. But just to say, no one entered the event in 2024 that didn't have a ticket. And for us, that's a great success because it continues to mean that our event is successful but also remains safe, which is obviously paramount. Other things that were a great success for us were our planning timelines. So the event has the ability in the past to be expected just to pop up on the 31st of December. And we have done a lot of work in 2024 and actually continuing into 2025 to ensure that it's given the proper respect and space and time that it needs to be delivered. And so that means we have extended the build time from actually, in some cases, the road closures were 2 p.m. on the 31st of December before we could get in and start building. We've actually extended them to the 28th and 29th. So all partners have agreed that it's been a great success to look at that kind of the event and kind of really look at how we ensure that it's given the time that it needs to be built safely and so that we can deliver safely. I guess just one other kind of success story was our work with the Metropolitan Police Service. 2024, we were fully engaged with working with them. Not that we haven't been before, but we just kind of took it further and were able to kind of really work with them closely to ensure that they supported us to deliver the event. And that included kind of their posturing and their position on the event by changing the ticketing entrance. So when people entered the event, previously there had just been one fence, and this time we actually had several checkpoints for people to get through. By changing that, the police were able to posture their position to make sure that it kind of made the point that by trying to get into this event, you were actually committing a crime and that you shouldn't be doing that. So that was really great for us because it allowed us to have strong messaging about if you don't have a ticket, you can't come in. And the police also supported us in that messaging, which was really, really great. There were some challenges, as I say, and in particular, and I'm sure you will have seen, there were some issues around crowding around Waterloo Station. production. So that absolutely was a challenge for us to take forward into this year's event, and we have done that, and I'm really pleased to say. Obviously, we are still to deliver, but we have worked really closely with our partners in TfL, in Network Rail, the Metropolitan Police Service, BTP, to really look at the plans around Waterloo to understand how we can make that process of people leaving the event and actually coming to the event much smoother so that there aren't those overcrowding issues.
Thank you very much, David. I think you've tapped on a lot of the areas that we're going to be covering in terms of questions, but great to see it had a better attendance in terms of view rate than the finale to Celebrity Traitors, by the sounds of things, and obviously nobody entered without a ticket. So I think one of the key challenges that we'd raised previously was around safety. So I'll pass on to Assemblymember Best.
Thank you. Probably be a bold statement to say no one entered without a ticket, but I mean, if that's confident talk, but
I mean, as far as we are aware, as far as we are aware, that no one entered without a ticket.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. In terms of the event and production partner identity, could you tell us a little bit, David or Kate, how you're monitoring their performance?
I'm going to take that if that's okay, Emma, just because I have that closer working relationship. So, yeah, absolutely. So this is the 4th year of us working with Identity, and actually the last year until we go back out for a new framework for New Year's Eve. So this is our last year with them. And I think, as I mentioned last year at this meeting, we've really been working with them to build on our lessons from previous years and really look at good practice. And I'm really pleased to say that actually we got some really positive feedback from the police, which actually stated Identity as being an excellent partner along with the GLA in delivering the event. I would say we're not easy clients. We scrutinise budgets, as you would expect, probably more than they would expect, but we look at all budget lines, we look at the finances, we look at where we can drive down costs in all possible places. We need to ensure that we're getting value for money, and my team absolutely do that. Last year we were audited by the internal MOPAC audit team, and the feedback that we got from that stated that we were vigorous in our approach to project management of Identity and budgets.
Apart from budget, what other delivery KPIs do you have for them?
Sure. So obviously the main objective is the safe and successful delivery of New Year's Eve. We work with them actually very, very closely for a number of months. We actually started working with Identity in June this year, which was the earliest that we have started working on this event with them. And through that, we look at things like the budgets, as I've said, but also the risk register, timelines, engagement with our stakeholders. London is a complex city with lots of people, so making sure that we're speaking to the businesses and speaking to the residents is really, really important. So that's something that we work really closely with Identity, but also looking at things like testing. So we undertake testing exercises, so tabletops, and also a Harja, which is run in collaboration with MPS. So kind of there's a real thorough process with Identity that is not only weekly meetings, sometimes daily meetings, depending on what we're doing, if we're on site walkabouts or recce's, but also we have kind of monthly meetings where we are looking at budgets and making sure that spend is being spent in the right places.
Thanks. Do you know how many people attended in the 24-25?
I might have that. Let me look in my file. I think I can tell you the dropout rate that we had, if that's helpful. So the dropout rate was 16% of people who have bought tickets. And in the past, we normally have a dropout rate of between 20 to 30. So it was actually lower last year than it has been previously. And I think, off the top of my head, but I will need to check that, Emma, I think the number was around 75 to 80,000 people.
Okay. I mean, do you know why you think the dropout rate was low? Is that maybe because the price point moved up for the tickets, so people had to really commit to come in?
It absolutely could have been that. But also, I don't know if you remember, but it was incredibly windy on New Year's Eve. So I don't know if that played a part in some way. I have no idea. But yes, yeah, it's something that we're looking at currently.
Thanks. I don't remember if it was windy. I'm incredibly boring, so I'd be
no,
indoors,
but just
yeah.
that may sound like a wild comment. The reason why I've said that is because the other New Year's Eve displays got cancelled because of the wind. So our one, in fact, was the only one that went ahead that night. So Hogmanay got cancelled, and other regional fireworks displays got cancelled.
Okay,
so that's why I said the wind, not because I'm a weather expert, because I'm not.
Okay.
Nothing better came up as an alternative for people then. Okay. Assembly Member Baker.
Thanks, Chair. OK, so talking about the plans for this year's fireworks and just for the event itself, not thinking about like crowds, transport, anything like that, we'll come to that. But just on the event itself, have you made any significant changes, David and Katie, to the plan for the actual fireworks event this year?
Other than what I've spoken about in regards to Waterloo, we have also worked with Royal Parks on St James's Park, because last year there were some issues around people getting into the park when they shouldn't have been, and some damages that have occurred, which we resolved. So there is some work around that. I mean, an ongoing challenge for us is the non-ticket holders who turn up to the event. So that's something that we are consistently working for and planning for in our in the kind of preparation for the event. So they're kind of the issues. But actually, it was a successful event last year, so we are duplicating the things that were successful and changing the things that were not so successful.
So in terms of the content of the event, is anything changing?
That's still the creative process is
it's
very
still
much
ongoing,
happening now. So
right.
we're not giving away any.
Oh, right, I didn't realise I was asking a question we'd have to go into closed session for. Right, OK, so that's all right. Well, no, you will be able to answer this. So, well, we wait in excitement. So who is responsible for, like, the fireworks, the narrative, the quotes, the song choices? Who decides that, who proposes that, and who sort of signs that off? How's that all sort of checked over?
If I press one of these buttons, are you hearing me?
Yes, yeah. It's the one with the little person, and then when the red light goes on, we can hear you, yeah.
So the lead is very much from the creative experts within Identity, the production company, which is how it's consistently been. This is my first time obviously working here, and I must say I'm incredibly impressed with the quality of the kind of producers and directors within Identity that we're listening to in terms of their ideas. They obviously know that there is an ambition, as there has been previously, to look back on the last year and the kind of highlights, if you like, of the last year and the reflections, to look ahead a little bit to the next year if possible, to have a party and provide a kind of celebratory moment for people at home or at the event, and to kind of provide a global showcase and a real spectacular moment to celebrate our city and indeed the country. So that's where their starting point is, and then they very much come up with something that then is presented back to us.
Yeah. And presumably that's obviously looked over, because you need to have confidence that, despite the fact that obviously they're the creatives, it's right that they generate it. So somebody's then looking over it going, yeah, that's all right. No, there's not going to be any sort of, drama arising out of that. What's that process in terms of taking it back, and who signs it off?
I mean, that's very much happening now.
Yes.
So we're it's live, and it's very much led by their team. I would say, without wanting to be without wanting to kind of limit the work of the events team, it is sort of like, oh, do you think we should have a different colour there? Have we seen too much pink? Is this a modern enough tune? Is this the right balance?
Yeah.
We're of course giving feedback like anybody would, but absolutely the kind of the expertise and the leadership comes from them.
Absolutely understand. That's what you're getting them there for. Who signs it off? Who says that presentation, those messages are all okay?
We do share that with the Mayor's office, but that's at the end of the process where they see that, and then...
so they're not involved in,
the
tweaking as it goes along? So,
no.
So Sadiq isn't saying there's too much, red at this point or anything
I will
like
be
that.
honest, he did once ask for a song to be slightly longer because he thought it resonated with the audience, but apart from that, no.
I knew.
It was sweet, Caroline.
Right, there we go. You've got the headlines written now, so
yeah,
we can end the meeting, to be honest.
That's clearly going to come up next week at MQT. Thanks. I think that's the end of my questions.
Thank you very much. I've got Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. Interested in the approvals process there and ensuring that political impartiality, because there's some instances in the last couple of years that have stood out as being odd to me. The first in 2024, there was a little bit about the 10-year anniversary of equal marriage, and for some reason, a soundbite of Sadiq Khan was played. Now, of Sadiq Khan was played, the mayor. I say because it was. I don't think it was a quote given as the mayor, but that's a time where I think there's a lot of key players in that. Obviously, it was David Cameron, Nick Clegg, but also Theresa May, Lynn Featherstone. There's a lot of key political figures you'd attribute to that, to pushing that, as well as campaign leaders that were part of that campaign. To play a clip of Sadiq Khan for that anniversary seemed slightly political. The other political instance was in this year's 24-25. Always strange to know what to say this year or last year. Were quite funny actually, but there was a playing "Why Does It Always Rain on Me?" followed by "Things Can Only Get Better." Now that does not take a massive leap of the imagination to see where we're getting to with that. That is not politically impartial, and I think that we should aim for more political impartiality from that. So it's strange the mayor is then the final sign-off, because clearly the mayor's office is not going to provide that political impartiality. So who does that?
Just to come back on the points that you've made, the inclusion of Sadiq talking over the Pride LGBT plus section, I don't think that was done intentionally to necessarily make a political point. It was about that everyone is free to love who they want to love, and so that was kind of why that moment happened. And in regard to the umbrella section, I totally understand the perspective that you have of that, but it was about the weather, and I can't. And I know you don't believe
David.
No, but hang on. Let me just respond. Hang on. And I can't talk about this year's show, but hopefully when you see this year's show, you may think, oh, okay, fair enough, because there's something in the show that kind of relates to that. So it's also just to explain, like, you know, we really have to look at the year and find some really good moments to talk about. And sometimes those good moments aren't necessarily kind of, you know, there for us to see very easily. So we have to, you know, the moment of the weather, you know, whether you believe that or not, was genuinely a moment of looking back and a light-hearted moment.
But just from the conversation, it seems that you two have both seen the content for this year and are happy.
I have seen the content, yes. Although it's not finished, so it could change.
Okay.
Okay, Assembly Member McCartney. Okay. Yep. Okay. So Assembly Member Georgie next.
So security and crowd management, yeah?
Yes, please, yeah.
Thank you. It's the old 4-4 question. Sorry, that's an inside joke, guys. Really apologise.
Next year you'll find out all about it.
Next year you'll know. I mean, David, perhaps this year you could reverse it. You could do things could only get better, then why does it always rain on me? If you want to make up for it. What security and crowd management plans do you have in place this year, and how do they differ from last year?
So, as you would imagine for an event of this type, we have a substantial crowd management plan in place and an event management plan that overarches above that. We have taken a lot of lessons learned from our security delivery last year and taken those through to the planning for this year. Last year we had 3,000 stewards and security staff. This year, 2024, we had 2023 we had 3,000. 2024 we had 3,254, and it's looking likely that security numbers for this year will be similar, if not higher. That is still being developed, so I don't have that definite number for you at the moment.
And so you referenced the Waterloo issue earlier, but what lessons were learned from the barrier breaches, you know, in particular on Victoria Street. So what could we learn from that? What are we going to do better?
So the barrier breaches on Victoria, we are looking at how we can actually get people to enter the ticketed viewing areas more quickly, so it stops the build-up of people around that soft ticket check area. So we are looking at the plans at the moment to make sure that we are progressing people through that process a lot quicker, and so looking at opening the ticketed checks earlier. We've been in correspondence with the police, talking about how they can support in that area. Obviously, it's not their job to do crowd management, but their presence does help us in kind of making people think twice about trying to break the barrier line. So that is something that we are taking forward and looking at within the crowd management plan. In regards to Waterloo, that's a substantial piece of work that actually we've been working on since March with our TfL colleagues and our Network Rail colleagues, BTP and also MPS. And we have developed a new plan for that area, which includes a new entrance being opened so that we can create a one-way system for people entering it and exiting it. One of the issues that we had last year, and I'm talking for you, colleagues, so please do step in. One of the issues that we had last year was there was a confliction of people trying to enter Waterloo and exit Waterloo at the same time. So one of the mechanisms that we've put in place is to create that one-way system there.
Okay, that's helpful and good clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Assembly Member Russell. No, it's already been answered.
Thank you. So I had some very serious casework after last year's event from an older person who ended up not getting back to home in Orpington until 3 in the morning after a trip to the theatre. And they struggled to access Charing Cross station because all the stewarding was set up with people going to the fireworks event rather than for the benefit of people who happened to be in London on a night out who needed to catch their train. And she had an extremely stressful experience, which I wrote to the Mayor about, had a great letter back, which actually had lots of stuff. However, we've noted this feedback. We'll consider if there's anything further that can be done in the future. And then about the lack of pedestrian information for accessing stations for people who weren't connected into the fireworks messaging, recognise the feedback and the improvements need to be made in this area. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the planning, one of the things that was a problem last year was the event planning is one thing, then you've got the train operators, you've also got TfL, and I think that this particular constituent fell between those gaps and came up against stewards who were just trying to deal with a volume of people who were trying to access or get away from the fireworks, and they weren't set up to provide appropriate information to this particular person. So, yeah, maybe for the two at the far right-hand end, and you'll know who's best to answer, you know, what planning are you doing for the people who are not attending the fireworks but who need to access the transport system?
Yes, I can speak on behalf of London Underground, but we do have a very joined up planning approach with Network Rail and the organisers of the event. We do have provision for anybody who wants to use our services to access them. There is no restriction, there's no differentiation made between people who want to or attending the fireworks or who are not attending the fireworks. And it could be said there are just as many people using our services who aren't ticket holders as there are ticket holders. So provision is made for ticket holders and non-ticket holders. There is a full wayfinding signage plan in place which does direct people to all available access points into stations. But there are huge amounts of people around any one time. And it is, I can understand how it could be very easy for someone to get lost in the mix of those people, not approach the right steward perhaps, who would be able to direct them to the right access point for whichever station they want to get to. Because station operations, they do change on the night. Some doors are closed, some are left open. There are one-way systems, and people do need to be directed to the correct, access point. So there is signage. There are stewards who understand this, but I can understand in that mass of people how an individual could actually not find their way to a station. I think we have learnt from even this one particular incident from last year. I think in that joined up planning approach we are making, we are striving, doing everything we possibly can to make sure that every bit of wayfinding is highly visible. Every steward is briefed to the utmost degree to understand every available access point, not just for ticket holders, but also for any member of the public who wants to use our system.
And are you planning communications ahead of New Year's Eve for people who might happen to be in London that night, who don't, because Londoners who live in London probably would find out about and know about the fireworks, but someone who's come from Orpington might not know how the fireworks would impact their journey from the theatre, and it might have been that if they'd walked in a different direction to a different tube station, they could have accessed Charing Cross via tube from a different direction, and it might have been much easier for them. So just, what kind of communications are you planning for that, so that people understand that all travel in London, in the centre of London, is quite complicated on New Year's Eve?
Yeah, we do put a lot of comms out about London is a busy city, full stop. On New Year's Eve, it's an incredibly busy city, so you do need to plan your journey in and out. So that is a strong message that we do send out, not only through the GLA, but also through our partners at TfL and other partners such as MPS, BTP, etc. So that is something that we do try and push. We have our website, which provides lots of information about road closures, stations that will be busy at certain times, the event footprint, so you won't be able to just kind of walk across a bridge to the other side of the river. So we do try to provide as much information as we can. It's quite difficult because we don't know what we don't know, as in we don't know where people are going or how they're getting in or how they're leaving. So we try to keep the information as general as possible about planning ahead and thinking about what you're going to do. And just to kind of say, we're really sorry that person experienced that on the night. And when we read it, it was kind of like a horror story of kind of ongoing of her moving from one station to another. So we've absolutely considered that in our comms for this year about trying to be a little bit more clearer about, again, it's a busy night, but also, do plan ahead and actually thinking about the stations which aren't necessarily directly connected to the event footprint. I mean, it's London, so people can walk anywhere they want, but the ones that are on the kind of edge of the event, that will be incredibly busy from the event.
And maybe there's some kind of messaging for the stewards about looking out for older people or vulnerable people who might not be familiar with it. They might not have a smartphone, or they might not be used to using a smartphone to get travel updates, so they might be less likely to have seen the messaging.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think, so just to clarify, maybe Ralph, Trevor, so for those people who are able to use the smartphone apps, Google Maps, City Mapper, etc., will there be messages and clarity over what they can and can't use and how busy it is, etc.?
Thank you for that. So yes, there is. So TfL's comms goes out in line with the GLA's comms. We have our TfL Go app. Will that be done? And on the TfL Journey Planner as well. So there'll be a complete coordination between those particular things. I can just add to the previous question that we are also communicating with the train operating companies that are coming into London as well. So I was in a meeting just the other day where we were discussing that comm strategy for people coming in from outside London that may not be used to that.
Great, but just to be really clear, so Citymapper, Google Maps, those third-party systems that obviously use our data, it's an open data source system, they will be sending messages to their users as well.
That originates from the TfL Go data set.
Yeah. Fantastic, thanks. Okay, move on to the next section, which I'll pass on to Assemblymember McCartney.
Thank you. I have two parts to my question. One is around counterfeit tickets. This was really an issue, I think, the year before last, and you put in quite robust arrangements last year. So can I ask, have these worked? Are you doing anything new this year? And is scam sites still an issue? And my second part is, last year, for those without a passport or photo ID, you said that stewards on the entry gates will decide whether to accept your alternate photo ID, which obviously led to concerns that there might be different rules applied in different places. What are you doing about ID and alternative ID to photo, to driving licences and passports this year?
Yeah, I'll take both those questions. So fake tickets, we still experienced fake tickets last year, and actually, even though we had moved to a digital ticket only last year, which absolutely helped in getting rid of some of those fake tickets, we did still experience that for New Year's Eve. So we've really tried to work on how we can combat fake tickets and fake websites within the power that we have. There are some websites up right now that are completely fake. They are scam websites. And we're running a campaign. So we did a press release on Monday which talked about not falling into the fraudsters' hands. So a press release went out to talk about that, just raising the point again that the official ticket operator is Ticketmaster. So if your ticket is not from there, the likelihood is it's fake. But we also have been working with our partners. We've been talking to a ticketing expert in regards to fraud, who has given us some advice about things that we can do. And one of them is that we have been talking to MPS, their cybercrime unit, who have actually contacted the websites to tell them that, that we know that they are not real and that they should be taken down. They haven't yet, but we are now in the process of talking to our legal teams to work with them to get those websites taken down. In regards to ticketing for this year, I'm not going to go into too much detail about changes that we have made for obvious reasons, but we have changed and improved the technology again, another step up, which we are hoping will stop more of the fake tickets that are being put out and around. So does that answer your question about fake tickets? And then in regards to the photo ID, it's a really tricky point. We have a set of criteria that sets out what ID you should bring to the event to show proof of who you are so that it matches your ticket. Obviously, people have spent a lot of money on a ticket and they turn up and, in many of our events where we ask for ID, many people simply have forgotten, and so there is a flexibility there for us to ask them what other photo ID they may have so that we can still allow them to enter the event. So, the rule is that you should have one of the listed photo identifications, but because we want as many people as possible who have bought tickets to enter the event, we do allow some flexibility. But I do appreciate your point about different horses for courses, and I think what we should probably do is create a second list that perhaps we don't publicise, but that the stewards have that they can use to check if another form of identification meets that criteria.
Thank you. So just on the ticketing, I believe you introduced dynamic QR codes. Is that the case?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Live. Yeah.
Yeah. So live. Yeah. So they're constantly changing every minute or so. So it's impossible to take a screenshot and then share it, for example. Okay. Great. Pass on to Assemblymember Russell for the next set of questions. And these, Tom, you've been patiently waiting online. I think some of these questions will be aimed at yourself.
Yes, I mean, I suppose, fireworks, we know there's explosives and lots of smoke and all the rest of it. So it's important that the GLA checks the environmental impacts. And so I just wondered if there are any new or additional measures that the event company and the GLA and other partners have brought in this year to minimise any environmental impacts of the event this year.
Tom.
Okay, well, I can't speak for the... I'm terribly sorry, got an echo. Try again. I can't speak for the contractor because they haven't decided the final content of the show. But overall, yes, worldwide, an issue, and all companies have striven to reduce that environmental. But as you say, they are explosives. They are going to produce combustion byproducts, and you can't not have that if you're going to have a firework display.
Absolutely, and I think everyone understands that, and nobody wants to be the fun police on New Year's Eve. So.
I can actually. So we have got some we have got some great results actually from the 2024 event, and just to say we are always striving and continuing to try and make the event as sustainable and green as we can, bearing in mind obviously it's a giant fireworks show, but we appreciate that there are other areas where we can reduce the carbon emission impact, and so the events production team Identity do collect data from not only themselves but also from the third-party suppliers and the contractors. And it's part of their contract that they have to supply that information to us. And they use Trace to calculate the associated carbon emissions from each of those activities and areas. And just so you know, the areas that they assess are the production build, the production graphics, so kind of signs and things, the event transport, staff travel and accommodation, waste, obviously, and energy usage. And so the total event emissions for the 2024 event was 80.20 tonnes of carbon dioxide. And actually, that's down from the previous event, which was 99. So we have brought that down, which I think is a great achievement considering the nature of the event. And the way that we've done that is it's through waste. We've reduced the amount of waste that we've created. So looking at ensuring that no plastic, cutlery, cups, things like that, it's all compostable. And then also through our production materials. So we've tried to create things like signs that are reusable, that we can use again and again and again. And just kind of really kind of pushing the point of whether signage is needed. Where do we really need that? Can we use a digital version, for example, which I know obviously then has its own issues with energy usage. So they're just some of the things that we have achieved. And I think you know this, Caroline, but the actual fireworks and pyro, and Tom, do jump in, only makes up kind of 0.39% of the carbon emissions for the whole event.
I think it's the transport, isn't it? The sort of the shipping or the trucks.
It is. That's where it's mostly kind of created. Yeah, but we're always trying to get better at that. Looking at if we can, suppliers can put more things on the truck. So it's we don't want half-empty trucks. Just making really striving to ensure that we're not wasting trucks coming in that are half full.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Prince.
Thank you, Chair. David, I think you might be able to answer this one, but anyone else feel free to jump in. What was the final cost of the 24-25 event? And what would you say were the biggest drivers of those costs, please?
So the final cost was 4.4 million. And the biggest elements of that budget, when broken down, is the majority is on infrastructure, so fencing and other types of equipment. But also, you will not be surprised, stewarding and security is also a huge amount of money that is part of that budget.
It doesn't quite match the figures I've got, but it's not that much to worry about. Ticket sales brought in just shy of £2 million. Is that correct?
For last year, it's slightly more, actually. So brought in slightly more than 2 million.
And that figure you gave is the net amount after the ticket sales have been removed?
That's correct.
So that, from the figures I have in front of me, which don't quite marry up with what you've got, but I'm sure they're not that far out, shows something like a 25% increase in costs on the previous year. Would you agree that's correct before we go any further?
Absolutely, the events industry, there are increases in the events industry, and we have experienced that in the planning and delivery of the event. So yes, the budget has increased, and that is because prices are going up.
Actually, if the figure I have here for the previous year is correct, it's actually more than that. It's nearly 50% increase. how much have you budgeted for this year? Are you again budgeting for an increase?
We are looking. We have a contingency within the budget, so we are hoping that the budget will be similar to last year, around the 4.4 million. But yeah.
So I was looking at the year before, because this year we haven't seen that figure.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's actually only about a 10% increase to be fair to you, but you still think it's going to be around about that figure?
Yeah, and just to explain.
I was just going to be clear that there wasn't a 50% increase.
No, I just said that. I was looking at the previous year's figure.
Fine.
I've reformed the figures, don't worry.
Just to say, and also, like, we absolutely take the budget and driving down costs seriously. We are actively looking for ways in which we can raise revenue to support this event. So, for example, sponsorship. And that is something that we were successful with last year, and that's something that we are looking to repeat this year.
And are you looking at the price of the tickets at all?
So the price of the tickets has already been announced, and it has gone up for non-Londoners by an additional £5.
Tell me what that price is then now?
Yes, so it's depending on there's two types of viewing areas. So depending on which one you choose, it's either £55 or £40.
Okay, and for that, what's the price for Londoners and non-Londoners?
Londoners remains the same, 20 or 35.
20 or 35. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. I wanted to say thanks, Dave, for providing those figures for us, and that's really pleasing to see that it's kind of stabilising from that 50% increase, which was the year before, and so it's encouraging to hear that actually it's not going up at that rate, and hopefully we can hold you to that next year, that we won't have seen that.
I absolutely will try my best, and that is the intention. And as I say, we are looking at all revenue-raising opportunities, and already starting to think about next year as well.
Okay, and so just to confirm, that was so the revenue was up from 1.75 to did you say 2.2 million last year?
I haven't got the exact figure. I'd need to give that to you, but it was above 2 million. It was more than 2 million, definitely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, hopefully, if you can confirm those exact figures, that would be brilliant. But it's obviously good. But there's still, I think, this slight problem with looking at that £20 entry point. I think most people would want to see some sort of discounted rate to make it accessible for all Londoners that might want to go. Is that something you have looked at again this year, or do you think it's just not feasible?
It is something we looked at again this year, and that's one of the reasons why we've kept it at that price of £20. And I do appreciate your comment about that still might be not affordable for some people. I think we did do some benchmarking to look at other equivalent events, and actually our event still sits at one of the cheapest for people to attend. So, for example, Hognommy is £26 for local people to attend. So we still remain at one of the cheapest fireworks events, and also
I think with all due respect we're using different comparisons though, because I appreciate the point on Edinburgh's fireworks, but I would hope we'd be looking more at the Sydney's, Rio de Janeiro, and they still have those free kind of access points. So I hope we're in the global market, no disrespect to Edinburgh, but still, so I appreciate what you're saying, but again, I hope it's something that we look at, if there's a possible way we can make it slightly more accessible.
I think it's fair I don't think you'll be surprised to hear that balance between trying to make it as accessible as possible for anybody who wants to attend, making it a spectacular event, and most importantly, making it a safe event, it is very tricky. So we do spend a lot of time. It's a lot of where David and I at the very beginning talk about that balance. And, the events industry is facing increased costs. Security and stewarding is getting more expensive, and we want to make sure that we're never compromising on the right numbers of stewards that we need, for example. So whilst I absolutely take that point, I do want to really reiterate really strongly that we do work really hard to find that balance. And for us, if we can keep those ticket prices the same, not even increasing with inflation, for example, and also make sure that we can stay in our budget and deliver a safe event, you know, that has to be an outcome that we're pleased with and proud of.
I appreciate it's a complex dichotomy, which is, I think, what I was trying to recognise the problem, but I still want to raise it as well as something that is on the radar. How are ticket sales doing this year? Do you have a percentage sold or?
So our first batch went on sale. Oh, I can't remember the date, but it was early October. So they are on sale. We've nearly sold out of those. There are a few left for our for the viewing point furthest away from the London Eye, which is something that we experience every year. And our second batch of tickets are due to go on sale, date to be confirmed either towards the end of November, beginning of December.
Thanks. And if I could just come back to that point around fake tickets. I just went on Google and the first 3 sites were not Ticketmaster. Then there was the London Assembly announcement around this, and I just thought perhaps we're missing a trick there, where there is a link to Ticketmaster, but it doesn't say in that initial article, this is the only retailer where you can buy tickets. It does say it in the FAQs if you go down and look at. But I think if it said in the main body of text, just under the link, this is the only retailer, I do think that would be a way we could help. And it's a shame, again, that those fraudsters are using a model that puts them above the official ticket seller. But I think you've recognised that.
Thank you. We will look at that as well and seeing if we can move that further up into the body of the page. And yeah, as I said, it's a constant challenge, and we're doing everything we can within our power to challenge those scam websites. We are very aware that the top 3 websites are not ours, and so we are trying our best to get them taken down, and it's in progress.
Thanks.
Just one final question from me to Dr. Tom Smith, actually, just in relation to. You're an expert in fireworks displays more generally. We've asked you specifically on the environment, but actually, what do you feel is your assessment of London's fireworks display in the international context of what goes on New Year's Eve?
Well, I think, you know, it's iconic. It's not Sydney. Sydney is an absolutely unique venue because of the nature of the lay of the land and how many points you can look directly at the firework display, but it's spectacular. It achieves all the needs from that point of view, and I was involved years ago. I've been doing this for 25 years at London New Year's Eve celebrations, more in the design, but it's safe, and we put in so many constraints about what happens if the wind's from a certain direction and of a certain strength. I think we're better at that than anywhere else in the world.
Fantastic. So there we go. So on that incredibly positive note, I think, as Dolly Parson would say, you're the only one in terms of the one ticketing location to buy these tickets, to be there on the night. If you want to be there in person, there is only one location that you can buy those tickets, and that is via Ticketmaster. So please don't get scammed out of that. Good times never seem so good. So thank you very much to all of you for your participation in this discussion. Can I ask members to note the discussion that we've had and the final bits of the meeting. So thank you very much to all of our guests online and in person. It's been absolutely wonderful. And we've just got a few bits to finish off the meeting. So we've got the just to note the work programme for 25-26. Thanks. The next meeting of the committee will be on 2 o'clock on the 11th of December in committee rooms 2 and 3. Noted. Yep. And there is no urgent business, so I declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much.
This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.